Hello, everybody. How are we doing? I am here, and actually, we'll just go straight over to our actual scene with him. It doesn't make much sense to be sitting here, but I am here with Hayden Walduck, who you will recognize from a previous video where we were discussing towards the end of ninth. Now, I won't tread on any of his stuff, but Hayden has a long resume within Warhammer 40k, particularly in the competitive sphere, and we are going to be chatting today about a tower list. Now, before I throw over to Hayden, the big thing to put in front of this entire video is that we are talking purely competitive. If there's models you like, if there's units you like, if there's stuff that you run and you've been getting success, that is great. We are talking about the 1% or higher. We are looking at this as sweaty little idiots that want to do with their toy soldiers the absolute best that we can do against the other best people. So, with that said, Hayden, would you like to introduce yourself and tell the fine viewers who you are and why we'll be talking today?
Of course, my pleasure. My name is Hayden. I am from the Gold Coast in Queensland. I play for the club known as Ethos. We have our own podcast discussing all things about the hobby, not just competitive play. We go into some more evergreen topics around, some of the guys have some passions around mental health and painting and, other aspects.
Yeah, we did.
And Australia-wide accolades that, yes, the list is
Hayden,
quite long.
I apologise. With the new collab cam that I haven't done before, I thought I was doubling up audio with desktop audio bouncing at the same time as the collab cam. So I think a lot of that got cut out, and I apologise. To recap for everybody, so I don't make you do it again, Hayden, and it'll sound better coming from somebody else. Hayden is a fucking baller. He is the 2022 WTC champion when Australia took gold. He was the Tau player on that team. We took third again this year, which is fantastic. Hayden was instrumental in the back end of it with charity work and that sort of stuff, getting the boys over there, which is really fantastic. And I think that's basically the recap up to where we are now, Hayden. I am so sorry, my dude. Now, for anybody who's interested with the organization that he is a part of, Ethos, there is a link down in the description. Not only to their organization where they help out with a bunch of different aspects of the community, but also we have Hayden's commission painting stuff, which I'll be honest, I didn't know until you sent me that link that was like a full thing that you've gone into, man. If you'd like to look at his work or maybe even be one of the lucky people that gets a WTC champ to paint models, then definitely go and check him out.
Yeah, so I've only recently kicked up the Instagram. I've been doing a lot of just word of mouth commissions for the last sort of 5-6 years, and yeah, just recently, I had a guy reach out from New South Wales that wanted some work done, who attended ATC, and then I've just gone through word of mouth of those guys, and the first thing everyone asks when they talk to a commission painter is, "Where can I see photos of your work?" And
oh yes.
And I was like, well, here's a bunch of photos I'll send to you. So I thought, you know what? Let's throw them on an Instagram page dedicated to some painting and some hobby for all you lovely people to see. Going forward, I will end up doing a couple of little quick tutorials. I've been talking to the Queensland guys about, what sort of content they like, long form, short form, simple, a bit more complicated techniques. So expect some more content on there. So if you jump in and you see only one post of my messy ass workstation today, you're like, oh, this guy doesn't even have any models on here.
We've all been there, man.
Just Just calm down. They're coming.
So yeah, anybody that's watching this is a VOD later on, anybody that's here live, which by the way, welcome to all the people in chat. I'm sorry it's been going and I haven't really been able to pay it any mind, but welcome everybody. Please go and show him some love. It is always the worst thing when you're just like literally starting out with your first couple of posts and everything else, and the algorithm is a cruel, cruel mistress. So yeah, mate, with all of that said, let's talk tier list. Now, for everybody watching this, tier lists are a meme. And I mean that not in the most literal sense, but in the sense that usually a tier list, you're doing it to condense down, like, basically so that I can draw years of learning out of Hayden's brain and put a color and a position to it. We're going to try and give as much context as we can. We're going to try and give as much information as we can. But there is nothing about this that you should walk away from and be like, I'm going to buy 3 Hammerheads right now because they said it wasn't terrible. I don't know if we're going to say that. But, you know, so take all of this with a grain of salt. This is very much our opinions. And some of it might just be for the lulz and to troll people. You would have seen the thumbnail. I might have trolled you with that, but yeah. You can see on screen we have the categories. Greatest good, greater good, good, lesser evil, demon, and swamp ass. And we're going to put all of the models into those categories. If you say triple hammerhead is the way you'll make my day, oh, Loopy, please don't put me in a position to break your heart. What I'll do, first off, I am going to elevate myself a little bit with my standing desk, so I'm going to mute my mic as I do that. Hayden, why don't you look in, because you've got a view of my screen in this new professional setup that we've got, and everybody, you're very, very welcome. I am really, really excited about it. It seems that the stream chat bubble is dead, but I can't get rid of that anyway, so whatever. So, let's talk Shadowsun, first and foremost, as we're structured it in Battlefield role. Let's start with the Queen of Queens.
Look, Shadowsun got a very, very generous points drop. She's now 100 points flat, which is people were taking her before, and now you just get a little free prize with taking her out. It's just cheaper. Mm-hmm. And the only time I've ever found myself taking her out of a list was to replace her with like a Coldstar Commander in the interest of keeping my bring it down low.
And mate, isn't that something? And that's something that, like, I guess we can touch on right at the start. The biggest thing that I'm building lists around at the moment is assassinate and bring it down. Because there is a world, if we go into the uber optimal, that we are just bleeding points. Non-goddamn stop. And for everybody out there, you can take both assassinate and bring it down as fixed objectives, which means that if your opponent's list gives up enough, you could just go, cool, I'm not drawing cards. I'm not worried about what I'm going to do. I'm just going to rush you and murder your face. And I'm just going to pull 100. So, great.
And really, the implication for it is you give someone an easy out. You give someone just a crack in the door for them to stay in the game, and you're better off, taking a small hit to your list and not sub-optimizing, but, making the choice between the two instead of taking both to keep your list on the cusp of just giving away enough to make them consider taking it. But if they do take it, then you can sort of reserve some assets, keep some resources away from them, and keep them at a sort of soft 10 to 14 on the bring it down, and make them wish that they chose tactical, because then they're also not getting the CP generation from discarding tactical cards.
Yes.
So if you're smart with the way you design your list like that, you can put them between a rock and a hard place.
Definitely. Now, in terms of her as an entity, she's not the most defensive character once somebody gets within her range, but oh my goodness, Lone Op is so fun to abuse. It is just one of my favorite tricks at the moment, because like in 9th, everybody hated me because if I saw something, it was dead, and I was able to get an angle to see a lot of stuff. Now, it's, I have a bunch of stuff on the board you can't interact with. I'm pre-measuring, so I know you can't interact with it. And I'm going to screen the entire board, so you can't deep strike. I actually had an Eldar player that had 2 corners of the board, a little 3-inch bubble that he was able to put stuff in. And he had almost half of his army in deep strike.
Feels good.
Oh, it just felt so goddamn good. So her lone op, her being able to follow somebody around, and there's a little bit of synergy with 2 of her abilities, where her reroll 1 Zora and her, if you target somebody with a strat, roll to get a CP back. Very, very nice to have her within those little bubbles, but she's also so great at just splitting off, being on her own, doing her own thing. And even if you don't get reroll once, she's still functioning within a game plan, which I love. There's a lot of flexibility in that. So where, if you had to go, and we'll, at the end of the sort of talk about every single unit, we'll go through and we'll look at it as a whole, and we might rearrange things in different places, but it, you know, her fusion blasters to your head, thighs around your neck, where do you put her?
Oh, look, the thighs around my neck are selling me. She's going to go pretty good.
I think Greater Good as well. I really do think she sits in such a strong position. She's not... There are some lists where she's not just an auto take, and there is an argument for people creating a game plan without her. But yeah, she is fantastic. Now, my boy, Farsight, which, I don't know, were you able to snag one of the new models?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, I was able to. My sponsor was nice enough to actually get me one of him, and I'm really glad that happened, because I really feel for all the poor fuckers out there. The GW was like, yeah, we could probably make about 3 boxes. That'll service the world, right? Like, Tau's not that popular. And just, like, the scalpers get the 3 boxes, and then they're like, oh, yeah, I'll sell it to you for $3,000.
Yeah, no one wants combat Tau characters. That's not how it works.
Nobody wants combat in Tau at all. Like, nobody has ever asked for us to have a melee unit. So, yeah. I'm not going to lie with Farsight. All memes aside, and going back to the meme of a tier list, Farsight is good. I was a little bit disappointed they didn't lean into the new model and everything else to give us stuff that interacted with, you know, like the big-ass, like, thing that he has on his forearm. And we know nothing about what's his new battlesuit? A supernova? Nothing.
I thought that was his overdrive.
I mean, I guess there is an argument for that. I think I got caught up in a lot of people talking about it potentially being like a talisman of Arthas Moloch or something to do with that because of the Arcs of Omen Farsight book and a lot of the stuff there. Though having said that, his rules are still fantastic. Now, as you mentioned with Shadowsun, he also got a very appreciable points drop. He is 90 points. 90 friggin' points.
Double digits.
And it's, and not to give too much away, but I'm going to an event this weekend. And I decided, because I, 1, hate myself, and 2, I'm a content creator, I am taking a list, which I know is a little bit of a meme, but I'm taking a double Stormsurge list with Fisher Fury. And I've got Farsight in there as a solo dolo, drop him down, rapid ingress, whatever, have him just jump in and be a menace, and if I lose him, it's 90 points. Like, you know, who gives a shit? I don't have enough characters for Assassinate to be worth it. And I like the idea, like, that tech of rapid ingress now being a thing. I think without that stratagem, this version of Farsight goes way, way, way down. Because of the rule that you've got to be within 9 to get the +1 to wound. You want him in melee, you want him doing all that stuff. Tank Shock is fantastic. You know, people that don't know, Tank Shock is a flat 10 dice, and if your strength on your weapon, which he has a strike profile, you roll 2 extra dice. Or is it 8 dice and 2 extra? One of those 2.
It's 10 and 2.
Yeah, 10 and 2. So you get to pump out a bunch of mortals on the charge after shooting, and with a +1 to wound, because if you rapid ingress at a decent position, you can walk into that range with your unit, and Crisis Suit's attached to him. Like, at the moment, everybody's spamming, you know, Sibs, but there's also an argument for Plasma or Missile Pods, depending on the meta that you're playing into. +1 to wound on that stuff is fantastic in this edition.
Yeah, look, +1 to wound is valuable sort of in any situation where it's not extremely niche. Farsight's probably going to be close regardless, but I find his value is probably going to be better in just using him as a 90-point solo piece, because unfortunately you can't shoot everyone off every objective. You do need to go punch some people in the mouth, and he does it.
Oh yeah, he does. And his once per game, I will re-roll all hits and wounds. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, with all of that context, where are you thinking for our brilliant red boy?
Look, I think he clashes with Shadowsun a little bit, and I think Shadowsun has a more sort of overarching ability for the army. So I think he just sort of does get overshadowed by his smaller big sister. So I would just put him into good.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. He's like, going in the good category is not by any means saying that he's not strong or that there's not, good pieces about it. But it's just not that there is such a wide application of him that he can fit into different list archetypes. I think it's if you got 90 points left over, he probably beats out a lot of other things that are around that sort of point mark. So, and with now being at essentially power level and not being able to do some of the stuff we did in ninth, where you got a few points left over, let's change up some war gear options or whatever else. Fill in points. I actually despise not having a 2,000 point list. I don't know what it is in my brain, but I see like 1990 or 1980, and there's a little part of me that breaks.
Oh yeah, I put through Unity Devastation on a spotter just to get to 2k, knowing I can't use it, and just to watch people go ballistic on, he can't use that, he can't use his cheating.
Mate, that is a hell of a thing after Old Mate in America actually did that. You balls of steel, I'll say that. Say what you want, balls of steel. Now let's go into, so we've got a singular commander thing here. Now, unfortunately, I didn't make this tier list. But let's look at, first and foremost, let's start with the Enforcer, because in my opinion, he's the weakest of the three commanders.
Yes.
Now, the Enforcer being able to give a P reduction, I kind of find is not as useful as it might have been throughout ninth. Especially when we can't take a crisis suit that's got the Iridium to put him on a 2-up and then benefits cover and all that sort of stuff. It is nice that if you're in cover and they can't ignore it, that you are functionally ignoring AP2. That is quite good. But I don't find many instances where, with good play, that is unavoidable, that I will just need to do that. A lot of the time I'll use movement tricks or line of sight or fire and fade. Now being, if you've got a Coldstar 12 inches, is just really, really incredible. So I kind of feel that he sits in like he's still a commander. He's still rocking 4 guns. But I'm a little conflicted. What do you think, Hayden?
Look, if his ability was not while he was leading a unit, he'd probably be okay as just a single deep strike piece by himself.
Yes.
But, and then, even then, if that was the case, the normal Crisis Commander would probably overshadow them because he would get rear ones. But as it stands, they don't. So you'd have to join them to a unit. So I think the Crisis Commander and the Enforcer Commander are sort of at the bottom of the barrel in that respect. And it's nice to reduce the AP by 1, but it's just better to not be shot at all.
Well, yeah, and like I have seen somebody use a Crisis Commander as a tech piece. This was before the points reductions. So with Farsight now being a thing as a potential solo piece, fine. But Precision of the Patient Hunter was a tech piece that they had where they just dropped it and then just sprayed the hell out of everything with +1 to hit and +1 to wound from round 3 onwards. And I can sort of see that, but with some of the points reductions we've got, I don't know if that is strictly as powerful as it might have been before with what we were taking and what we had on the board. I think for the Enforcer, he's still a commander. It's still a fantastic data sheet. But yeah, you bring up a really good point. Him not being able to benefit from his own goddamn ability unless he's got crisis suits. I would put him in probably Lesser Evil.
Yeah, so would I.
Yeah. So, that's our Enforcer. Let's talk Crisis Commander then. Are we feeling pretty similar about him because of the same aforementioned problems? Obviously, reroll 1s is quite nice, but Shadowsun is a thing. And yes, it means you can have Deep Strikers on the other side of the board, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's a world, and I'll say this in advance of getting to the Coldstar, I don't think there's a world where I'm paying the points for a commander that's not like a little solo tech piece that isn't a Coldstar.
Yeah, so the reason I put the regular commander above an enforcer commander, especially when you're looking at the solo tech piece, is they're only on 50 mils and they're a little bit smaller. So a little bit
That's
easier
true.
to hide.
Yes.
A bit better to deep strike in some gaps. Where like your enforcer commander's on a 60 and they're huge. Like they're so tall. Like they're like taller than a Yvrain or your Khan or whatever it is, the swirly bitch.
Oh yeah.
And like
Incarn.
and she's huge.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like and being a vehicle, someone can just get a little bit easier line of sight to him. He's got to go around walls and the bigger base of structure around walls. And I just find the bigger base for a solo piece is a bit clunky. So the normal commander would be sort of just that little punch above the enforcer, but still runs into the same sort of fundamental problems.
Yeah, so I would be happy to put a Crisis Commander up just for the fact that you can comfortably roll him solo and still feel like you're getting a decent bit of value out of him. And he is, as you said, cheaper than the Enforcer. And it really is something to consider now. And you've probably felt this as well. Our stuff going to vehicles and fly getting gutted absolutely made it so that, movement is more important than it has ever been in this edition. Or in this or ninth. And so when I'm looking at stuff, I like the size that you mentioned, being able to hide them and maximize how close I am to being able to bump out while minimizing sightlines is just, it pays for itself over the course of a game, even just one game in a tournament. So I'm comfortable putting him up here. He's definitely below Farsight. And if there's other stuff that goes into the good category, he's probably going to be below them as well.
Yeah, and as you said, we can shuffle this around as we
Absolutely. Now, Coldstar, if I am running a Crisis list, even just one brick, it's my opinion he goes there.
Yes, I don't see a world where you take a Crisis suit unit bigger than a 3-man and not have a Coldstar attached to it.
Yep. Absolutely. So for everybody who might be newer or doesn't have the data sheet in front of him, doesn't have it memorized, the Coldstar Commander, when he leads a unit, he gives their guns assault, which all of our stuff lost, and he makes their base movement speed 12. Now, the big interaction with that is that on the Crisis Battlesuit data sheet, when they advance, they just automatically go 6. They don't roll a dice, they just go. Now, without assault guns, that would functionally mean that you get speed, but you can't shoot. A Coldstar Commander means that instead of going 16, they go 18, which you'll remember from 9th was our old spend a CP and advance and go and blah, blah, blah. And we can shoot after we do it. It means that a Crisis unit that is playing slightly defensively rockets out across the board, even if you have to go around a little bit of terrain. And then, the other interaction, as I mentioned before, Strike and Fade, now gone up in CP, regardless of unit size, but you make a normal move after shooting. That means your normal move is 12 inches. I don't know how anybody ever has a problem with running that. Like, there will be build archetypes that don't need Crisis suits, but if you've got it and you're inclined to take it, that combo is just gross.
Yeah, and after the data slate, the first thing I noticed was the CP modification, so people can't increase our Strike and Fade anymore.
Which
so
is
it just
so
gives them
nice.
a little bit. Yeah, because you don't really have the CP generation without taking Ethereal, sitting him in reserve and hoping for a 4-up or, getting that 5-up when you use one from Shadowsun. Tower kind of a little bit struggling for CP, like they get a little bit choked up on it. You sort of have to go tactical to get that little bit of CP back. So as soon as someone bumped your Strike and Fade to 3 CP, it hurt. It really,
I
hurt.
just didn't use it again. It left my mind and I was like, shit, what else can I spend my CP on? I just started YOLO re-rolling like hits or wounds or whatever. And there were actually a few people down around my area that were building into these vector abilities. And they were talking about like some of the interactions and stuff there. And just, I 100% agree. Unfortunately, I also think that the Pure Tide Engram Neurochip is functionally dead as an enhancement now. There are some arguments for it, and maybe I'll make a video about some of the combos that I've been sort of thinking about with that now that you're not going to use it on Strike and Fade, though I never was before, because 4 CP in a turn is like, you have to be sitting there for 3 turns, literally doing nothing. So Coldstar Commander, when leading a Crisis unit is just, in my mind, he's probably going to sit at the top of greatest good. I don't know that we have another unit that's going to take it from it, but I won't jump ahead. We'll get to that when we get to it. Now, Kadra Fireblade. I have loved the ability that this guy got, and until recently, never even considered him. Never even once. However, he is quite a nice little kit if you've got the points to spare to chuck him in. So, Hayden, do you want to take the Kadra Fireblade? What are we working with this guy?
So, personally, I like the Fireblade. I would slot in, because I prefer a Fisher Fury style playlist or playing, and I would put in 3 Fireblades before I put in 1 Commander. And and I would stack all my chips in the Breacher Fish, because the problem we're going to have as tower players is when you take out the big dogs of your Eldar and your Imperial Knights and your big monstrous stuff, people are going to go back to Hordes. Mortal Wounds being kicked in the teeth, people are going to move to Hordes. And with the NIDS being the first book out, the Unending Swarm detachment gives so many benefits to Hordes. And, Queensland's a bit of a shark tank, and I've got Eric Lutherus up here, who is just the king of Tyranids, and he is just frothing over that detachment. So you need to deal with Hordes. And your Necron Warrior bricks are coming back up, or they're not coming back up, they're just staying where they were, which is towards the top.
Yeah, well, there was a shift around them with some of their other pieces being nerfed or whatever else. So I do think you're right that, like, and I had a stream with Scotty for my event, and we were going through some of the stuff, and he was saying that, like, as a Necron player, he was looking at the Silver Tide and just being sort of like, yeah, that could be a thing. And I actually played Liam at Steel City. Skull dragged me over the table with his Necron list because my Thousand Suns just bounced and he just infinitely revived over and over and over again, and I was just like, okay, cool, this is the game we're going to play. Which, by the way, one of the best games I've played in my life. I adore Liam after that game. But yeah, I was looking at that and just like, if that wasn't even fully optimized, because he was sort of playing a teams list, but I think they were more not optimizing because they were about to go to WTC. They were just like, all right, here's some archetypes, here's whatever. We won't show our cards, but we will practice on stuff. And if that list gets better, then that's something that I'm like, okay, I need to be able to take out that stuff. I need volume, I need all that sort of thing. So yeah, I would agree.
But a breach unit without a Fireblade doesn't kill a warrior brick in one of activation. A breach unit with a Fireblade, because you can take 2 more gun drones on him. So your sergeant of your breaches has a gun drone and a guardian drone, just to protect you from a little bit of Overwatch. If someone does try to, get a cheeky one on you, you do have a guardian drone to keep you a little bit safer. But your 10 infantry, your 10 breaches, your Fireblade, and 3 gun drones with a grenade strat kills a whole unit of 20 warriors.
Okay.
One activation.
Yeah, and the grenade as a strat now, as opposed to what we had with, like, breaches was still great in 9th, but being able to huck a grenade and do a bunch of mortal wounds on even just the most unassuming unit, like, for example, Kroot Carnivores, it is just a really, really nice way to spend CP, especially if you're not that concerned anymore with, like, not having a crisis unit and banking 2 to get Strike and Fade. So yeah, I am actually going to be running, as I said, double Stormsurge and Fisher Fury on the weekend. And I am really, really keen. I've only got 1 card to Fireblade in the list because I only own 1, so, but I am actually really, really keen to see, because I will have 2 different units with and without, and just sort of like get a measure of their output and everything else. But so with your love of the Fireblade, where would you like to place him?
I struggle to write a list without him, so I have to put him in Greater Good.
Greater Good, okay. Would you put him above or below Shadowsun?
I would still put him below Shadowsun.
Okay, yep.
Because it's a different element to the list. He gives 1 unit some punch-up. He doesn't complement the army. That's why, he might not be in the top of the bracket, but he still makes the bracket, in my opinion.
How do you feel about enhancements for this guy?
Before the data slate change, I had 1 with Pure Tide.
Yep.
So I could get 2 Breach of Fish units out and double grenade strat. And then when someone tries to charge them, double re-embark.
Oh, very nice.
Or being able to double neg 2 charges and make people take a battle shock on the charge from their having grenades. Just forcing and pinging off more battle shock tests is valuable because we've got multiple ways to do it through piranhas, tiger sharks, and the stratagem. So, you know, if someone makes a charge and murders a unit, you don't care if they're OC0 because they failed the battle shock on the way in. So you're going to keep that objective because you're going to have a devilfish towing it.
Yep. No, that is a really good tech piece. Yeah,
that's where I found that value.
Obviously, a lot of people's minds go to things like through Unity Devastation. I feel like throughout the Tau community, the focus is so much on damage. But then you look at that sort of a combo, I actually think that gives more people pause than, oh, these guys can give someone lethal hits. It's, I got 2 units that are just going to pump mortal wounds. And I don't think we can do it anymore, can we, after the change? Because you need to replicate battle tactics, and I don't think either of those are battle tactics, are they?
No, but the combat embarkation, to get back in your vehicle, is a battle tactic.
Okay, so that one is doable. Okay.
Yep. And your grenades, your EMP grenades, the whatever that's called now, the neg 2 charge, take a battle shock, that's also battle tactics.
Okay, so that as a tech piece is really, really interesting. Especially because, like, without the Modcar playstyle that we used to have with Fish of Fury, without the pre-game move and everything else, I do feel like it probably will be around about turn 2 or 3 that the rubber is properly going to hit the road with Fish of Fury. Because I'm probably going to be sending piranhas, which, spoilers, have been in, like, every single one of my lists. They're now my first point of contact. They are the things that are rushing out to battle shock and move block and, you know, just be the most annoying things on the planet. So yeah, that is really, really interesting. I love that tech, man.
So yeah, if you see me in an event, you don't even need to look at my list. It'll be a Fish of Fury.
Mate, if I see you at the event, I'm just gonna like look at round 1 pairings. So long as I don't pair you, I don't drop.
I'm planning to go to an RTT in mid-October, so we'll be able to give you a little update on how my thought process is.
Oh, hell yeah, man. Would love to.
On the table.
So we've got our Fireblade up in the greater good. Now, Darkstrider, I had a massive, massive spiel at the end of my Forge World thing. It turned into a review Pathfinders and review Darkstrider. This guy, in my mind, is on the cusp of being good. He has to join a goddamn Pathfinder squad and he doesn't have lone op. That's my biggest problem with him. But a 12-inch deep strike bubble on paper actually is just like, oh yeah, cool. Because I actually used that relic in 9th a decent amount because in New South Wales, everybody was like, I love demons. And so I'm like, cool, you can love demons all you want. This 24-inch bubble, you are not coming in on just because I've got a Coldstar sitting there. And I love that he's got that ability, but he just... There are too many ways for an incidental character like that to get killed off. He doesn't have the deep strike keyword, and you don't want him for that with the abilities. And Pathfinders, if somebody puts any sort of non-incidental fire, and even sometimes just incidental fire, like, they're just gone. How are you feeling about our Strider of the Dark?
Look, I had him in a list pre-data slate, and I begrudgingly put him in for the no deep strike, just to help with GSC, because we were so overcosted on our points. We didn't have the bodies on the board to actually screen out some of these Michigan 3-inch drop. So I felt like I had to take him. But now his bodyguard unit came down in points. Pathies are down to 90 points. I don't know. It's one of those models that I'd hate to love him. So I'd take him if I had to. But now that we can get more bodies on the table, I don't feel like I need to take him. Yeah,
and he's got such a cool goddamn model. It actually kind of breaks my heart a little bit that he's an epic hero, which is basically a copy-paste of Illic Nightspear, but there were a couple of lines of code deleted when they were doing it, and yeah, so...
I call him Illic off Wish.
That's a good one. Honestly, Darkstrider, like, he's got a good ability, but he kind of, for me, from a competitive sense, he kind of falls into Demon, maybe Lesser Evil if I'm being generous on the day.
Look, I can't remember his points cost. I'm just going to have a
60.
quick look now.
60.
60?
Yeah.
Look, when you were putting him 120 point squad of Pathfinders, it was getting a bit XC. Now they're down to 90.
That was Swamp Ass. That was like,
Yeah,
he was down
yeah.
here. Yeah.
Look, jury's still out for me, so I think we'll just leave him in in Demon.
I think he's our first Demon. Yeah.
But there is wiggle room.
There is wiggle room, and you know, to go back through. Oh, I accidentally scrolled. Sorry, everybody watching. To go back through, like, you know, what we said at the start, but just to reiterate at this moment, he's so close to being good, and we are talking about lists that we want to take to GTs. We are like, I can't validate it. Like, I would happily take him to an RTT, and I would fuck around until the cows come home, and I'd probably have a lot of fun. But if I'm going to some bigger events, I am getting ready to run into players like you. And I don't want to have 60 points of wasted stuff, because I can't do that against players of your caliber and Liam's caliber and you know, some of the sharks that we have in New South Wales as well. Like, you just... Yeah, I want to have something which is functioning more of a game plan than just a deep strike bubble. If I've got to spend points, right? Maybe, but yeah.
If he was 80 points in a lone op, I'd take him in every list.
Yeah, I hard agree. That is the thing that I got to at the end of that Forge World stream. Bump him up, I don't give a shit. Lone op, even when he joins a Pathfinder unit, he loses the lone op keyword.
Yep.
Fine, absolutely fine. But...
Or, you know, give him stealth. Give him stealth at least.
It's weird that he doesn't have it. Our Kroot carnivores have stealth.
He's got Infiltrator?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, because when you put him in Pathfinders, you don't need to take the recon drone for Infiltrator.
Yeah. You lose the burst cannon, but you were never really taking the recon drone for the burst cannon anyway, so it's kind of whatever.
To be honest, you're probably taking grav drones on them anyway.
Yeah, -2 to charge is infinitely better. Yeah.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Darkstrider sits down there. Now to talk about our Celestial cast, and it strikes out to me that we don't have On-Va and On-She on here. So, should have checked that up before I started this. Oh boy, I try and look professional, but, you know, here we are. So let's bucket them into a chat about Ethereals in general. Let's start out actually with On-Va. So, On-Va, there was a lot of people sort of talking about him early on. He's very, very cheap. He can pop a 2-up invulnerable save for 1 turn, which is kind of in meme territory, but also kind of like, that actually kind of does function with some stuff. But I haven't run him. I haven't run into anybody that's run him. Where do you sit on there?
So I have run him. And I found and it comes down to, before you even get to the table, if your list has Shadowsun and you're intending to bubble out with Shadowsun, you take On-Va instead and save yourself some points.
Right. Okay.
He's essentially the same thing, right? He's a lone op. He's relatively defensive. He's probably more defensive than Shadowsun.
I would agree.
He can pop the 2-up info. Yep. And he was really good just to park on an objective, bubble it out, hold a corner, and, you know, sort of bait people in to drop in and try and shoot him or try and clear him off an objective. He just pops 2-up info, tanks a lot of stuff, because there's no clause saying you can't reroll that 2-up info. So you can pop a CP to reroll one of the saves.
Yeah,
just to keep him alive, make him tank a little bit more. Like the little grot that kicks around the gas goal. He's got 2-up info, but you're not allowed to reroll it.
Makari? Yeah.
So he has a specific rule says you're not allowed to reroll his 2-up info. On-Va does not have that, so he can do a bit of a tanking in some scenarios. So he was good in that respect. You know, you lost the CP generation. You weren't really caring about his +1 leadership bubble for the battle shocks.
Never even looked.
It wasn't near anything. It wasn't near anything to really get used to it. So if you're taking Shadowsun to bubble out a corner, save yourself 35 points. Take On-Va instead.
Yeah. Okay. So On-Va, with, you know, a little bit of tech, a little bit of a game plan, where does he actually sit for you? Because Yeah, I feel like he is very, very opponent dependent, because if you aren't playing somebody that you can bait with that 2-up, they will just kind of functionally ignore him and just continue on with their game plan. But if you are going against somebody who could fall for that, it is extremely powerful. So where do you think you would put him?
I think he sits in a teams format more than a singles format.
Ooh.
As a bit of a skewed tech piece. But I think he's just average. He's just a downright 5 out of 10. He's just flat average.
I'd be happy to put him in good. He's not on the lower end of it. He's not pushing into the upper bracket. And if anything else goes in good, I think we'll probably put them above him. He is just on the cusp of it with enough rules and not really anything else that it kind of makes it okay. So that is on VAR. On She, I feel like they did him dirty. And you mentioned the Incarn earlier in the stream, which is funny, because he is a copy-paste of the Vizark. With, actually, I think,
Except
worse
so
rules
much
again.
worse.
Yeah, he's the
worse.
Vizark from Wish.
Yeah. Why are they doing us dirty like this?
I don't know. But it's hard to compare to Eldar, because Eldar basically just this big swinging dick that isn't going to be reined in anytime soon, even after the nerf. So it is kind of a bad idea to compare anybody to Eldar. But, I mean, he sits at the bottom of Demon for me. He might actually be our first entry into Swamp Pass.
Look, because he doesn't generate CP, he doesn't have lone op, he doesn't really do anything, he can join some Kroot. Woo.
Which, why was anybody like, oh, Tau players love to put him in with some Kroot?
Someone's going to put him in with 20 Kroot warriors, and they're going to slap. No, look, I'd be happy to put him in as Swamp Pass.
I think Onshi is, he's our first victim of Swamp Pass. I would never recommend anybody play this model, and really, I guess, get him if you like the model, because that's the other thing that makes this so heartbreaking, is that Onshi might actually be the most interesting character in our lore. He is a fucking baller. But just rules-wise, yeah. So
the only thing really going for him, right, is you can park him in 20 Kroot. They get +1 OC while he's in there, so you Kroot grade OC to a body, and you just have bodies on the table. And they stature up behind Nell, good screens that hide to not get shot, and they just go charge stuff, tag it, and with your limited mobility on your wrap-ins, they just try and tag objectives. OC2 tagging objectives for 160 point unit. So you got 43 OC in a unit.
Yeah, which I think, and we're very, very close to talking about them, I think for that point, I just go another unit of Breaches and a Devilfish.
Exactly, and that's why it parks him in Swamp Pass.
Yeah. And that can sometimes be for anybody who hasn't sort of thought about certain things from a strictly competitive sense, taking out your own personal biases and feelings and whatever else, sometimes things are just outclassed by other things within the same point range, within the same role, within, the context of an entire list. Sometimes you just don't see things in the competitive sphere because there is something else that is 5% better. It is that holding a V. So, you're going to see competitive players always go to the thing that is 5% better. It doesn't mean that the other thing is that terrible. I mean, Onshi on his own, I still would probably put him in Swamp Pass even without it. But, you just always think about in context of why certain decisions are being made. And that could be one of them. That he's just, you wouldn't spend those points when you could have something else. So, let's go to the Farsight Marksman. Now, this guy I have run a bunch. And I've had mixed results with him, and he's kind of been based on my opponent. But also I kind of found that he was just falling into the backfield objective holder sort of role, which is fine because he also has a gun that character units don't want to give him line of sight from. But then I was also sort of he's a good guider, he's got Markalite, he's got all that sort of stuff. He more benefits when he's shooting from somebody else guiding him, and now with the data slate that has effectively fully killed daisy chaining, whether your event wants to play it or not, it is now no longer in the rules. I wonder if I actually tech this guy in, or if I spend that 70 points just trying to get another guiding unit that can also hold a backfield objective. Pre-Data Slate, he was fantastic. I love this model as well. But where does your thought go in a post-Data Slate world?
Like you, when the book first came out, he was a cheap, able to take multiple loan op. And as time's gone on, I've liked him less and less. Being on such a big base, because he's on a 40 mil base and only moves 6, he's very easy to tag and wrap and pin in combat. Just purely because of his base size, you know. If anything on a 32 mil base can get enough of a distance on their charge and pile in and purposely block themselves off, you know, a couple of little combat shenanigans, he can be an easy pin. So that's why he does sort of fall into the backfield category. Some of those missions, you don't get any points for sitting on your backfield objective, so he's kind of falls into a little bit of a waste. And I'd rather save 5 points and take on bar.
Yeah, and I did find, and it's funny that you mentioned like the mission rules and the backfield objective stuff. I found that as a backfield objective holder, because he had such a slow movement, and usually I wanted him on a second floor so that he always had line of sight and whatever else, his base isn't big enough to block out the backfield and still be useful to the front end. But so his base is big enough and he's slow enough that he sort of sits in this weird middle ground where you want to park him, not move him, and if your opponent has any deep strike shenanigans whatsoever, you almost need another unit to sit there with him and babysit him, unless you're on one of the missions where holding your backfield objective doesn't mean a thing, and then I just put him on top of a 3-story ruin and go, cool, plunging fire. He's now got AP2 guns. That's it. Like, I'll dominate a fire lane. You don't want to send somebody up there to him. And even when you're at the base of a 3-story ruin, you've got to be within, like, I think it's like 4 inches horizontally to be able to shoot 12 inches up. And like, I don't remember, I haven't done the mental maths in like a decent while, but I measured it out at a tournament. I'm like, okay, if I put him up here, you're committing somebody to stand in the open to maybe kill him. But like, you probably will, but then that unit just gets deleted in return. So I think in a post-Data Slate world, like pre-Data Slate, he was like up here as one of our lone op abusers and being able to offer something that we didn't really have. I think now he's just in the good category.
The only thing I kind of find funny with him is you can put him in a Devilfish and you can throw him out of a Devilfish with OC3.
Oh, how does your brain go to these places?
I sit here while I'm working and I'm like, this could be funny. And I look at my rules and I'm like, yeah, that works. I'll keep that in mind.
That
and
is
I did it to guy.
awesome.
I'm like, you got like a single land speed on that objective. What's their OC? Is it less than 3? Yep. Cool. 70 points.
Oh, I think we might have lost Hayden a little bit here. Once he's back. Can you hear us, bud?
You got me?
Yeah, okay.
Gotcha.
We had a little robot moment. AdMech jumped in to try and stop us getting this information out. So, land speeder, do you have more than OC2? And then jump out. That's the last thing I heard.
Yeah. So what's your OC? Is it, less than 3 or less? Then whack out a 70-point character. You're not giving away any resources of note, and you can testing an objective.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think even with a game plan around that sort of stuff, I still feel like he sits in good. Would you put him any higher or lower or?
Look, I don't think he'd go higher than good.
Yeah, I feel like he sits there and, like, once we get more units in, he may drop down a little bit. Like, he's a good tech piece. If you got the points, if you got the model, there is nothing wrong with taking him in a list, but he's definitely a model that you have to have a game plan for how you're going to use, and it changes opponent to opponent. So that's our Farsight now. Our humble Kroot Shaper, the last of our characters. Oh, sorry, I realised we didn't move off talking about the base Ethereal. We left On-Shi down here in Swamp Ass. Normal Ethereal, let's go there. Let's finish the Celestial cast. I am a fan for 50 points. I honestly am. Even when they fail me off the board, generating CP, and they do so often, I am actually a fan of the Ethereal.
I don't mind them. For 50 points, they are what they are.
Hmm.
You're not expecting them to move mountains. They're not going to score you a bunch of points. They might give you a couple of CP, and they'll come into a corner, and they might get you a tactical card if you draw it at the right time.
Which I have definitely done multiple events over.
Yeah.
I actually had an Ethereal tank 3 las cannon shots and get me 10 points.
Nice.
So I might be biased when I'm talking about it. Off recent experience, I may be just a little biased.
My issue is he can't guide people. He doesn't have for the greater good.
Yes.
Which, for the leader of the greater good, I don't know why he doesn't have the
It is a weird one. It is a really, really weird one. And it's not like there's no rules in there for eligible to shoot. They have a caveat for people that do not have ranged weapons equipped, as long as they don't do the things that normally brick eligibility to shoot, other than shooting, they're good. So, yeah.
It'd be nice to see them have, if he has a gun drone in the unit, he gets for the greater good ability.
Absolutely.
That would be nice, but, as it is, you probably take one. He's not going to win you games, but he's just nice to have sometimes.
Yeah, I think I would put him below the Farsight marksman in good, where, he can fit into a game plan. He doesn't feel like wasted points when he's in your list and when he's in your army. And that can be really, really nice for, like, as we were saying before, we don't have those little point increments that we can sort of fit into a list. There have been plenty of times I've ended up with 50 points or 60 points sitting around and no idea what to put in. I'm like, cool, Ethereal. Now, you can't take him with Farsight, and after the points reductions to him and some of the strats for Farsight that I've been brewing, the Ethereal does go much further down on the list of, like, will I put him in? But there's still plenty of lists where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to be a little bit CP hungry. I want him there. I want that redundancy. And if he doesn't get it, maybe Shadowsun does. And if all of that fails, I've got a card that I can discard at the end of my turn and get that CP.
Yeah, I reckon if you got Farsight, you can't take him. If you got Shadowsun, you'd probably leave him at home. If you're playing a Fisher Fury style list, you probably wouldn't take him, because they're not starving this for the CP. Because that probably leans into tactical. If you're playing a crisis heavy list, then you'd probably want the CP because you're burning 2 a turn on striking fade.
I definitely think he gets the most value with crisis. That has been the CP expenditure that I have played around the most, hands down.
Yeah. So I think he'll fall solidly into the good category. You're not upset if you have him, but you won't cry if you leave him at home.
Yes. He's always the last thing that gets put in my list. He is never anything other than the last model. He is kind of an afterthought, leftover. Okay, my game plan's set. Now the Kroot Shaper, I have not really had anything to do with the Kroot Shaper whatsoever. So I'm going to lean on you quite heavily here. Kroot Shaper, what are you feeling?
So I'm going to start this off by it stays in Swamp Pass.
All right, we have a second victim.
So him and bloody Onshi can just duke it out for the king of Swamp Passes. Because they both do the same thing. Yeah. They're both joining essentially the same units because you're not going to put the Chad Ethereal into some shooty guys. So they're both realistically joining Kroot. And Onshi gives more benefit to Kroot than the Kroot character, really. Yeah. So
even though
kind of like, what's the worst bad?
Yeah, even though, like, I remember reading this data sheet and just actively exhaling and just being like, why would I ever? And because you lost in 9th, like, the Kroot Shaper wasn't anything to write home about, but even then, there were certain relics you could take to make him a very nice tech piece. That EM Scrambler that I was talking about before with Darkstrider and whatever, there were people that were running a Kroot Shaper, even just on his own, because you had Lookout Sir and whatever, you just put him in a really obnoxious place, tiny little base, and he does something for your army. But now with the new
cheap,
leader
expendable,
rules,
all that things,
Yep.
Again, Lone Op, he'd probably go into good.
I wouldn't mind Lone Op on him. I really, really wouldn't, especially because, like, how many races can tell the difference between a Kroot Shaper and a normal Kroot? Like, who would you know to shoot at? Like,
look, even even a Tech Marine style rule, Lone Up within 3 of a Kroot unit would be nice.
I don't hate
Yeah, Tech
that.
Marine.
That is
Yeah,
actually
Tech
really
Marines
cool.
have the loan up within 3 of a vehicle. Like that would be something. That would be something that would make me kind of consider him.
But yeah, as it stands, yeah, him and Onshi in Swamp Ass. That being said, our beautiful carnivores. Now, the Farstalker squad is to the right of that. We are talking about just the base carnivores here. I have such a soft spot for my crew. I really love my little boys, my little chicken men things. With the points reductions going down to 55, it is very, very nice. Unfortunately, they are if I have the points left over for me as well. And there's nothing else that I want to put in.
So, pre-data slate at 70, I couldn't justify them. And, I hated to take them because I had to have the 10 bodies on the table, just for the screening distances. Now at 55, I'm kind of not mad to take him, but I'm still not happy about it. I'd probably rather a unit of 10 Kroot over 2 units of 4 Kroot Hounds, purely just for the OC.
The OC is very nice. It's one of the biggest things that's made me die because, like, any of my viewers are very familiar with my love relationship with Kroot Hounds. Not quite as severe as Reptar, which, by the way, I got to comment. I got to say this now. I'm completely left turning. I had somebody comment on one of my videos. Why do you keep calling the Stormsurge a Riptide? And I'm like, no, Reptar. Any of my 90s babies know full
From
well
Rugrats.
Rugrats.
Come on, man.
Yeah, like, look at the color scheme. And, like, I've had that quite a bit where I think because Australians generally speak a lot quicker than the rest of the world, and we do have an accent which is, let's call it, unique. We're like, yeah, people mishear me. But anyway, I love my Kroot Hounds so much, but OC0 has definitely been something which has hurt me a little bit, and it has relegated them into you are a tactical mission sort of thing. The OC is very, very nice on the Kroot Carnivores, but I've found through my list building that when I get to the point that I've got 50 odd points left over, I'm getting to the point where I'm like, okay, am I just slamming an Ethereal for the CP regen to go better into other things? I've generally, at that point of list building, I've already covered off my plan for generalized screening. I've planned out my deep strikes and my strat reserves and everything else. And they are well, you know what? I can cover other parts of the board, but I don't know that they beat out certain other things. I do want to take them, and there are a couple of lists where I've got one unit plugged in, and that will be nice. Because as I mentioned with the Farsight Marksman, that base is just it's too slow. The base is too big, too slow to really cover off where I want to with backfield deep strikers. Kroot Carnivores can do that fantastically. They've got stealth, and you need enough fire that's in range to get rid of those 10 bodies, probably with the benefits of cover. But yeah, I feel like with their current rules, because they got their only ability is what is essentially the Grizzly Feast from 9th. And you are never killing a unit with this unit. I managed to spend 1 CP on that strat once in all of 9th. I got it off once, and the unit immediately died afterwards. So I kind of feel like these guys might be our lesser evil. I want them to be better than they are. And even with the points reductions, I don't know that they offer enough to go up into maybe the bottom of good. I don't know. Hayden, help me out here. My bias is kicking in.
I feel like if you get to the last 50 points in your list and you're like, oh, I better put something into screen with, you've already sort of gone wrong about 500 points ago in your list. So, I think they're sort of overshadowed by some other tech pieces that synergize with the army a little bit better.
Yeah.
Again, they don't have greater good. They can't guide anything. They're literally just 10 idiots on the table. And they got a small benefit that you don't lose any from Battle Shock anymore. You're not too worried if they fail Battle Shock because they're probably not going to be soloing an objective anyway for you to really worry about them dropping OC0.
Yep.
I just think they're a flawed choice that drops them out of good.
Yeah, and if I'm putting them in, they are the lesser of two evils.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'll let myself out. That was terrible. Okay, so then moving on, the Farstalker band is more expensive Kroot with not really that much extra. One of them's holding a bow, so I guess style points.
Yeah, look, the only sort of mild benefit they get is they get to pick a unit, they get lethal and precision against them. By the time they get to shoot their shitty bolt guns at them, you don't really care if you're killing that character. If you even kill that character, you're trying to precision. The only small benefit they have is they're a mixed unit, so you can take one Kroot Hound in them to get the extra movement to zip around and maybe make charges smaller. But again, they don't have like the pseudo Grizzly Feast rule, so they just die a little bit faster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've definitely felt you gave them an ability to make somebody go, oh, they've targeted X character, and then nothing to back it up with. Not even like a stratagem that would make them even slightly scary. Like, I feel like I don't want to swamp past them. They might just be demon.
The only thing they have going for them is Infiltrate.
Infiltrate is quite nice. That is at least to feed into the synergy of the ability that they've got. You can place them in a position where maybe your opponent has to think about it. But then again, if you're putting them in a position to be able to see them, get an angle or whatever else, with how good players deploy, if you lose the go first roll, you're also losing this unit. So, yeah.
Because they don't have Scout, so they swap Scout for Infiltrate. So you can't even scout them out of line of sight if you do go second.
Yes. So, demon, or are we swamp passing them?
Even though the rule of cool is there, they're still going to get swamp passed.
Oh, okay. Now, this one, the next one we're putting in, the next of our battle line is the Strike Team. Now, I know that the icons are tiny, but chat, so this is Strike Team on the left, Breaches will go next, and then we will have the Humble Devilfish. Strike Team, for me, has never been something I wanted to pay points for.
So pre-data slate, I found myself putting a unit in just to have the option to put a pure Tide character in with them, and have the carbines on them for 20-inch range, and using them as a second Overwatch for deep strikers like Genestealer Cult. Because with a Fireblade in there, and let's say you're within range of Shadowsun, and you've successfully screened out on turn 2, so turn 3, they're dropping in, you Overwatch them, you're getting almost 40 shots with a couple of gun drones in there, you kill enough of a Genestealer Cult blob to get rid of the demo charges.
And now post data slate, we can't even have that as... Oh, no, wait, they're allowed to... No, they don't get to replicate Overwatch, they just get to do it on 4s. So that combo is now functionally dead as well with the battle tactic change.
It was very niche, yeah. And a good player would sort of just cut very tight angles, so only the demo charges would be seeing anyway, and around the corners of the bases on the ruins, you'd probably only get at maximum sort of 5 or 6 dudes shooting, and you're not going to clear enough then. So
they have been a very, very underwhelming. Like, they can use the grenade strat, but in terms of like what usually people make an argument for the strike squad, we've got better backfield objective holders. We legitimately have excellent backfield objective holders in a number of different facets, and they're not it. They are a point sink that, I think I have to swamp past them. Like, there might be Demon, because there is some tech there.
Look, I think they'll still fall into Demon because they're a battle line and they have OC2 a pop from memory. So OC2 a body. So I think just the OC2 pops them at 1 point above, your Kroot. But they still, again, get overshadowed by their hot sister, the Breaches.
Yeah, they do. They will never beat out Darkstrider, so he's going to sit at the top of Demon. But let's talk about the belle of the ball. A unit that before we found out points, but when we had our index revealed, I tagged as an S tier unit. And then when the points came out, I was very, very outspoken about these guys needing to significantly drop in points. And I'm not saying that I'm the one that made that happen, but I also called the Ghostkeel change, and I have 100% strike rate with changing our rules and getting benefits. So, everybody, you're welcome. I'm immediately going to chuck them up into S tier. And let me validate this before you go, Hayden. I know that you are sitting there right now, cocked and loaded with a whole bunch of knowledge to spray over everybody. But these guys, their rule for re-roll wounds against things that are in range of objective markers, being able to post up in a Devilfish, hitting on 3s with ballistic skill improvements, putting you hitting on 2s, being able to combo with a card for Fireblade, which is insanely cheap, and in a post-Data Slate world, the entire combo with a Devilfish being, I want to say 160 points, 165 points.
Yep.
Just
205 with the Fireblade.
And take a Guardian Drone on them, and you've got -1 to wound, which, if you go into players that aren't great with mental maths, will either overcommit or potentially undercommit to killing this unit when they don't need to, or even just being able to spike against people and, you know, having something live that they don't want to live. And on top of that, even without any other combos or whatever else, you are piling out 20 OC onto... Are they OC2 as well?
Yeah, 22 with a Fireblade in there.
22 OC onto a point after spraying the hell out of everything. And if you have decent guiders onto them with our army rule, as I was saying, I don't think Fisher Fury is the thing anymore without Montcar that is in your opponent's face turn 1. They are follow-ups after your first point of contact, which means even just one of these guys getting double exploding 6s within that combo is just... And it's strength 6, AP 1, damage 1. Now, yes, only damage 1, but in the context of the game, with benefits of cover being how it is, us being one of the only armies that can reliably ignore it, I am a massive fan. I am a massive fan. Now, I don't think there's ever a world where you take these guys without the Devilfish. Would you agree with that? Or I have seen people doing the Strat Reserve walk-on thing, but I find that one you need to be a supremely good player to do that effectively.
Yeah, so my problem with the walk-on breaches is very easily screenable because their guns are so short range, 10-inch range.
Yep.
So 16.5 from a board edge and you're safe. That disappoints me. And when you're coming in from that angle, it's very rare that someone will be on an objective from where that position is and you don't get your ability rule. So I think they're either in a Devilfish or you're leaving them at home.
I think so as well. I think Fisher Fury is the only way to play those guys. There are people that can pull it off, but they are either, and this does happen, so I'm not throwing shade here, but they may be seal clubbing against certain people where the combo works, being able to walk on, or they are just so good at using them, but they also have an alternate battle plan that they've built a list around doing it. But Fisher Fury is just so goddamn good. And I guess I am more than happy to leave them up in greatest good. I think breaches are incredible, and I think they are forming the second archetype that we are going to be seeing from Talis. You are either Crisis, or you are Fisher Fury, or even an unholy abomination of both, and getting the best of both worlds.
Yes, I think they're probably one of the best... In isolation, one of the best starter sheets in the book.
Yes, I would hard agree with that. I really love that because of how much, actually from playing your list at the end of 9th and really leaning in, because I was only playing Crisis, as we sort of discussed in our previous video. Playing that Fisher Fury gave me such a good insight into just how fantastic these little boys are, and I'm really glad that the rules actually back that up this time. I also like that they got rid of the 2 different profiles. Yes, we lost AP2, but a standardization to a longer range, I was kind of okay with.
I would take an AP hit for a ballistic skill hit any day of the week. I'd take that army wide if it was an option.
Seeing them on 3s, oh my god!
Okay. I was like, surely this is a typo, like the SMS discrepancy. Then when they changed SMS, I was like, sweet. But they're also assault weapons.
Yes, they are, which is a massive deal. As we used to have it all the time, now basically nothing of ours has it except for I think it's the gun drones that attach to Devilfish bodies or whatever else. I love them. We can't talk about them without talking about the Devilfish. Even just for the fact that these are Seeker missile carriers, and Seeker missiles are one of, if not our best, anti-tank weapon in the game from a pure stat perspective. Yes, they're only one shot, but if you can get enough of them into your list, and spoiler alert, you absolutely can. These guys carrying 2 of them means that they aren't just a Devilfish deployer anymore. They have something else to offer. On top of, with the new army rule, being able to be guiders if you don't have anything better or the angles are bad or whatever else, the breaches come with something that can get them to 2s. And you don't care about losing that unit being guided because you don't really want to guide a Devilfish unless you've got nothing else.
So I love the Devilfish and they're like my little baby, but I've like 2 big problems with them.
Ooh.
So actually, let's make it 3. And I'm going to foreshadow it by saying they're still in the greatest good. So despite these problems, they're still S tier.
Okay.
So, number 1, now that you can't daisy chain, they don't get as much benefit, and I don't see them being guided as much. So it sort of reduces some of the effectiveness of your one-shot seekers, especially when you're trying to hunt some stuff and
you're YOLOing on rhinos.
And that's never a game plan to lean back on.
Yes.
The second is their ability to advance and disembark, sort of pushes you into having to take the gun drone option on your side, because they're the only thing with assault. So if you do advance to get you guys out, you can't shoot anything, and then it's no longer eligible to guide either.
Yes.
So you kind of have to take the gun drones on the side. And
Would you want to take the SMS?
I've tried the SMS just for more and more out of line of sight, because the more guns you put in the list that need line of sight, the more people are incentivized to hide.
And Eldar is definitely a thing, and being able to take out some stuff that, they don't want you touching is very nice.
Yes. And number 3, you can't tag anything with them anymore and keep them safe, so they can still be shot while they're tagging stuff in combat.
Yeah, the vehicle changes were really, really big. It's nice that we can shoot out of combat, or, there are other things to shoot into against other particular armies with vehicles and monsters and everything else. But yes, that... And I remember when you were sort of talking about your Pathfinder combo to do aerospace targeting relays and then charging, different things into units or whatever and tying up stuff that they don't want to. That stuff is extremely powerful. I still do that a lot with, piranhas. I love doing that to people who don't think I'm going to charge that body into them. But yeah, it does hurt a little bit with that. Though I still agree with you putting them in S. I think even with those... Actually, sorry, was that your 3? Before I go into my thoughts, was that your 3 issues? So no daisy chaining, have to take the gun drones to be able to advance and do anything.
And not being able to keep them in safety by tagging stuff in combat with them.
Yeah.
But I think all 3 of those issues get outweighed by all of their perks and all their benefits that they bring to the list.
Yeah. And I'm okay with things that offer as much as they do in the role that they have to fill, being a good unit and still having some downsides. I think it means that it just makes you play a different game, and really when you master it, it makes you a better player. It sucks not having those additional options for just some little outplay things. So this combo up here, I would highly recommend people, if you haven't played this archetype before, jump in and actually play this combo, because as soon as you've done it a couple of times, you wrap your head around it and you see how strong this can be and how fun it is. I'm a big fan of Fisher Fury. I'm a really big fan.
Yes, and it opens up so many options on how you want to complement it. You can go hyper aggressive by putting 3 Ghostkeels in and just tagging everything under the sun, or you can go a bit more reactive and put a bit more backfield shooting in the way of Skyrays, or a couple of planes, or just pack a bit more scooting around shooting ability and keeping your breach of fish for threatening objectives and doing a bit of a bait and punch sort of deal. So it does open up a larger play style. And it gives you more options. So in a ever-changing meta, and we're going to be getting books sort of in rapid fire in the next 6 months, ours potentially being at the end of that 6 month, you need to be flexible and adaptable to the new books coming out.
Yeah, definitely. Hard agree. Now, speaking about flexible and adaptable, king of the transition over here, the Ghostkeel. At the end of 9th, I had a bunch of people, because that was when I was starting my content creation journey. I had a bunch of people that were so goddamn passionate about this model. And after it got the change that I recommended, I could absolutely see why. This thing is incredible. I think the first time I'm not going to take Ghostkeels is going to be on the weekend with the double surges, because I couldn't fit them in. And that broke my heart. I actually couldn't believe that I couldn't fit them in. But just, this thing has basically everything that you could want. This may be the perfect iteration of a Ghostkeel. Is that me being hyperbolic, or...
Yes. So the Ghostkeel is the best it's been since it came out. So for the people who don't know, when the Ghostkeel first came out, there was special detachments where you were only able to take X units, and they were called a formation. And Ghostkeels had a formation where it was 1 unit of Ghostkeels and 1+ units of stealth suits. The Ghostkeels could go in a unit of 3. When you took Ghostkeels in a unit of 3, they got +1 ballistic skill, and then could be essentially guided by mark lights to 2s, and they always shot vehicles on their rear armor. So you'd have a unit of 3 Ghostkeels that would just menace armies. And they had a similar sort of lone up rule where they couldn't be shot. So because there was 3 of them, it was 3 times per game. You'd make them hit on 6s when you shot them. So they were absolute menaces. And then they got G'd up, got all their sales from selling a bunch of Ghostkeels, and made them trash for a couple editions. But baby, they're back.
Yes, they are. Now, they suffer from a similar problem that the Riptide had, where the gun didn't change in strength. But I'm actually okay with it from the Ghostkeel's perspective, because I don't see this thing as strictly needing to fill an anti-tank role. It is, like, the Twin Fusion is awesome. I've been using that predominantly because it's a very scary weapon for you to either run at somebody and say, I'm going to hit you with, or if they're thinking about coming into range of the Ghostkeel, it's something that they need to consider. I've been using mostly the Cyclic Ion Raker as the main sort of gun. Have you found a preference between the big fusion gun and the Cyclic?
Yes. And it's the fusion.
Really?
I like to play mine very aggressive.
Why does that not surprise me?
What can I say? I'm an aggressive guy. Not actually. I'm actually a really nice guy. Don't
I was about to say you are like a bipolar on and off the table.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I think sitting them back to just pop some ion shots at stuff and sit on objective is a bit wasted for them. You know, they have a respectable toughness. They have a 2-up save. They blank 2 damages. I think they should be getting in there and touching and tagging every single thing they can, because they can fall back and shoot. Because you're going to take the battlesuit support system on them, so they are just going to tag every single thing under the sun, whatever they can, stop that from shooting you. Or they make the choice where they sit in combat, and then you're -1 to hit. So if someone does have a +1 to hit, your stealth and -1 to hit will still put them back at a -1.
Yeah, because
so for that durability again.
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, even though you can only go +1 or -1, you still consider all of the instances of +1 and -1 to get to a final value. So as Hayden was saying, if you've got 2 -1s and only 1 +1, you are still functionally at -1. If you have 2 +1s and 2 -1s, then you go back to a 0 value. But yeah, so... I have very similarly learned to use the Ghostkeels like that. For the first couple of times that I was using the Ghostkeels in 9th, I still had a brain of how we had to play everything else that wasn't Fisher Fury, where you needed to kind of protect resources and assets. As soon as I leaned into playing them as like distraction carnifexes that my opponent just did not want anywhere near them, but they couldn't escape them, my game plan started just skyrocketing. And that, like, I've found in my particular meta, I've found that I've needed to play around a lot more like Terminator and Terminator equivalents, which is why I think I've gone towards the 3 damage gun, because that's put in a lot of value, and I've had other things that I've sort of gone, okay, this is my dedicated anti-tank. But I can definitely see an argument for the fusion. When people have seen my lists and they've been like, oh, why aren't you taking the fusion, you're taking this, it's a consideration that, I always have to keep just parroting over and over again. Play to your meta. Make sure you understand the things that you're going into, because that can, like, with a piece this good, that can be some of the choices that you make. And I don't think there's a world where you don't take the fallback and shoot, because losing the smoke keyword for the turn that it falls back, like, why do I care?
Who cares, man? I'm just gonna pretend that line doesn't even exist.
Yeah, it's really arbitrary. One other thing for all of the Shassos that are in chat, it was actually in the, I think it was in the Rare Rules commentary earlier on, the blank damage actually happens at a very specific step, which is after the wound has been successful, but before the save roll happens. And they ruled it that you could use those against devastating wounds. Now, even though the mortal wounds have changed, you are still, before you roll a save, with now devastating wounds being you just don't get a save, you can still say, okay, I am using one of my stealth drones on that devastating wound, I will roll the other saves, because you are turning that devastating wound into damage 0. So make sure that you understand that. That is where the Ghostkeel gets a lot of its value, and if you don't understand that rules interaction, or your opponent doesn't and tries to push back against that, go to the rules commentary, find that piece, because it is one of the things that bumps these guys up massively. Now, I am super confident in putting this thing like here.
I think it's S tier, but it's not above breaches.
Not above breaches. Now, I am happy. I'm happy to go that one, because as far as I'm concerned, not being above a unit as good as breaches for me is still like the biggest dub. Yeah, it hurts me because I love my Ghostkeel, but I'll give it to you. They'll go below the breaches.
I feel like in the most simple analogy is you can make a ham and cheese sandwich, and the Ghostkeel is the best ham in the world, but you can't make a sandwich without the bread. And your breaches are the bread.
That is a fair analogy. Now, let's talk about the Crisis suits. And I feel like I know exactly where these are going, because at the moment they are competing with the breaches for our best data sheet, for a unit that you invest resources or game plans or whatever else into. They make very, very good use of our best strat, and I'm actually going to put them in between the breaches and the devilfish. Like, we've already spoken a fair amount with this. You put a Coldstar with them unless they're in a 3-man unit. And even sometimes then, there are certain times where you put a commander with them. It's not a bad idea, in my opinion, to even have Farsight rolling with 3 boys. Rapid Ingress, come in, spray a bit of stuff, and use him as a melee tank shock sort of thing. How are you feeling, Aiden? Am I off base there, or would you agree with that rough assessment?
No, that's pretty on point. The only thing I don't like about Crisis is they just bleed you bring it down. And
they do, yes.
Yeah, and that's the only thing I don't like about them. So that's my only gripe about them, is they just bleed a bit of bring it down. Personally, I don't like the Cyclic Iron Blasters. I'm too tempted to overcharge them, especially in the meta where like Custodies and stuff were getting around. Yep. And you kind of it wasn't the damage 2 you needed, because they were going to reduce it anyway. It was the AP 2 that you wanted.
Yes, to get them on 4s. You don't want them on 3s. Yeah.
No. And you don't want to have to wait until turn 3 to pop the +1 AP strat when you're close enough. So I transitioned to missiles and gun drones instead of shield drones.
Mate, you're keeping them at 4 wounds. You absolute madman.
Yeah.
Well, you'll have to let me know how you go with the missiles, because I did love my combo of missiles and plasma in 9th. I found that was really, really versatile to have. But unfortunately, our missiles went down to AP 1. That actually hurt me.
Yes.
That physically hurt me.
What I don't like, and if I ever have the chance to have an input at Games Workshop, I'm going to point this out as the first thing. A missile pod is AP 1. A broadside missile drone is AP 2.
And yet their high-yield missile pods on their arms are still AP1 damage 2. They are... You just get more shots. And I've said this before, because, like, obviously I work in a job which is, I can't give away, but like I am adjacent to a lot of stuff that goes boom. And high yield usually means that the boom is bigger or more intense. It doesn't mean you shoot more of them. And so like when I was looking at that profile, I just have the moment of why the hell does this exist? And yeah, when I was looking at the missile pods to get actually back on track so I don't left field us too much, just the AP1 is one of the things that has put me off going for the missile pods. I've played a lot of the cyclics and I have enjoyed exercising decision-making to get mastery over knowing when to overcharge and when to not. And I feel like I've been getting more and more successful the more I played that, understanding the matchups and everything else. But there is a point where I'm just like, man, I just want to fire like 18 plasma shots or 27 plasma shots at you and just see how you deal with that. Because the other side of it is that even though we lost 6 inches and we lost an AP, in the context of the game now with a 12-inch fire and fade back, it is still a scary prospect, and if I'm getting double exploding 6s from turn 2 with full rerolls from a unit that we will talk about a little bit later, that drives it up in my mind, and I feel like you could probably do a similar thing with the missile pods, and maybe this is why you went that route, that you're going, cool, I don't have to overcharge, I don't have to threaten myself, you're going to deal with a bunch of damage 2 stuff, have fun.
The big thing with me is I could do it from 30 inches away.
That is a big draw of it.
So
yes.
they kept the range, which was the huge selling point for me.
Yeah.
Especially in a world where if you were dropping them down to shoot a Wraith Knight, if Phantasm's back out of 18 and you're there with your D in the wind,
yes,
that's a feel bad.
Yeah, so, it really is. Yeah.
And 18 inches is pretty easily screenable. When you're coming in to drop and drop and shoot a knight, it's pretty easily screenable with a Helverin, especially if that one is, a -1 damage.
Or as they had a bunch of exaction squads, and now they're just going to move to Voidsmen, so that really hasn't gone away.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think they were too easily screenable at 18, so you're like, do I put them on the table now? And I just found them a little bit too clunky for my liking.
Yeah, that's fair. I do like that there is still an argument for taking different weapons. I would hate, at the absolute top end, I still do think that Cyclics are the best weapon we have available, but I don't think the disparity between them and others is so much that anybody should feel bad about playing other options. And at the end of the day, and I've said this a lot, that my biggest hope for the game is that we have options as players. I want to be able to take something else, and even if it's not providing me with one thing, I'm still getting a tangible benefit from other things within the line of text that allows me to take it. So you'll definitely have to let me know how the missile pods go. I am 100% going to plug in some plasmas and, murder some people with it, just to say that I've done it once in 10th before our codex. Yeah.
Look, the only reason you should ever feel bad about running Crisis is if you put burst cannons on them, just take Cyclics. Or if you put air bursts on them, just take yourself straight to the loony bin. Because air bursts are so bad.
AFPs and burst cannons really, really, really got gutted. AFPs, I half understand because of what we did to people at the start of our 9th codex.
Yeah.
But burst cannons, just why?
And if you put flamers on them, you got 5 minutes of my attention. That's about it.
If you put flamers on them, you need to have Farsight in with them. You need a rapid ingress, you need to walk forward, you need +1 to wound. Because losing the D6 +2 needs to get offset by something else, and for me, that is the +1 to wound. And if it's turn 3, maybe a pip of AP could be okay, but I also hate the restriction for turn 3 on that strategy.
Yes, but you're going to be close, so you're probably going to get tagged, or Farsight's going to want to be in combat, so you want 4 back and shoot, but you also want a 4-up invo because you're in 3-up save. So I think it makes you pick too many choices, and you can't have them all.
Yeah, definitely. That all said, Crisis definitely sit within the S category. Great is good. There's no going past them as an option for our army. Now to talk about a unit that I loved in 9th, but didn't get to take as much as I would have preferred. Stealth Suits. Coming out of the gate with a massive reroll 1s to wound ability, as well as, speaking about Farsight and rapid ingress, allowing a unit to do it for free.
Yes, and stealth suits actually having stealth is a relief. I thought they were going to drop that ball there.
I was worried that they were going to do that to us. Yes.
Yes. Infiltrator's nice, stealth's nice, free rapid ingress is nice. Being able to take fallback and shoot on your sergeant so they can fall back and do an action is nice.
Plugging a fusion blaster in him just because you can.
Because you can.
Yeah, you don't lose anything for doing it, so why not?
No, you're not exactly taking him for a burst cannon anymore. Now they're only 4 shots. Mm-hmm. They got a nice little point deduction.
Which I didn't expect, honestly. I was still okay with them where they were. It was good. It was really good.
I struggle to get them in my list, to be honest.
I tend to always take one. What puts you off? Is it just that there are other things that are competing for your attention?
So when I'm building a tower list, I look at what's my screens, what's my tech, and what's my spotters. And my spotters, these guys get overshadowed by a later choice, and I just can't justify them.
Okay, so it seems we have lost our Hayden. Let me see if I can get him back. He looks like he's coming up.
I thought we lost you for a second there.
No, mate, you dropped off just for a moment. Oh. I'm glad that we fixed that up quickly. Okay.
I was like, Jay's gone. I was like, I'm the captain now.
You're seeing the wonderful way that we live in Australia, where there are certain European countries on the fringe of Mother Russia that have better internet than us. But we're back.
My coconuts together and hold them up in the air for better internet.
No, you got to fall into the Australian memes. We go outside and cooey and get a kangaroo to run over there and. Yeah, or get our Catachan guard to go and flex muscles at people. Now, mate, the stealth suits, for me, I have found that having one of them in there allows me, because I have also been, flirting with stuff like broadsides and that sort of thing, where I find that if I play them correctly, I don't actually need full rerolls to hit on them. I actually want the reroll ones to wound, because spiking low on a wound reroll on those guys is a massive feels bad, because there's a lot of stuff you're wounding on 2s and a good amount of stuff that you're wounding on 3s. So that puts your failure margins, and it's kind of a running meme at the moment within my community or people that have played games against me or whatever, that I only win tournaments because of decision making. My dice are not in the equation. Ones are the only number that I seem to roll. So I love them for that. And I also love that, I've got an infiltrator unit that's a little bit harder to shift, or at least gives people pause when they're looking at it. They go, okay, you got 2 wounds, potentially 3 on the leader with a shield drone, -1 to hit, 3 up, and they're sitting in cover. How much do I commit there? And it can sometimes add to some unforced errors, or, just having something which you spike the rolls and it's sitting there and your opponent really didn't want it to be. I would be comfortable putting these guys below the Cadre Fireblade in greater good, honestly. You got some pause, mate. You can hit me with it. Be brutally honest.
I think because of the role they play, they sit at the top of good.
At the top of good?
I feel like if they go in greater good, they'll get shuffled back to good later in our list anyway.
I do think there are other things that are going to go into this category that would definitely put them down. So yeah, I would agree, either the tail end of greater good or sitting firmly at the top of good. I don't know that there's anything else that's going to go in that's really going to push them off this position at the very least.
They can go in between. They can be moderately good.
I need more categories. Okay, so now we are going to go to something that, in my opinion, is not moderately good. This is the unit that I had my little unfiltered rant at the end of the Forge World video about. For me, Pathfinders at the moment aren't it. And, running your list at the end of 9th made me fall in love with the Pathfinders iteration that we had then. The rails, all the special drones, all the different things that you could do. Now, I'm not going to repeat myself too much. If people are interested, go to the 1 hour mark of the Forge World video, and that's when I start talking about the Pathfinders. And I probably will cut it up and make it its own video, because it was a great rant. But essentially, I see the Pathfinders as not strictly bad, especially now at 90 points, but it's more what I look at for a unit that is great for somebody to wrap their head around order of activation and spotting with an easy unit to do so, because they get to do it twice. They don't get punished as heavily for the order in which they activate certain units. So it can be really, really good for someone to go, you know what, I'm moving from a lower table to mid tables, or I'm going from my local RTT, I'm going to my GT. I don't want to get overloaded. I'm going to have these guys as my spotters. They've got a scout move. You can take infiltrate on them. The rails and the ion, for me, are the biggest loss on these guys because they're sitting on 5s, and my Pathfinders never stand still. Not a chance in hell do they stand still. So, yeah, for me, they are, as we were saying about the stealth suits, but more egregiously, they are outshone by other things that will do what they do, but just do it a little bit better.
I feel like if Breaches and Kroot had an ugly baby that got kept in the basement, they'd be Pathfinders. Because they're not as good as Breaches, but they're not as good as it's not as bad as Kroot.
Yeah, they are definitely a middle ground there.
They definitely got their depth from 9th stripped out of them, not being able to double move and tag and do all sorts of shenanigans and playing into your aerospace, and they don't really score you any points like on the table for tactical objectives.
No. I actually think that an easy fix to them would be to give them a datasheet ability to move after observing.
Yep. Change their double observe to move after observing.
Yep. I would plug 1 or 2 units in almost immediately.
And then I think it pulls Darkstrider up as well.
I think it does too. Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
His stonks go up as well.
Yeah, because having that model, like this guy goes up to, I think, punching with Kadra Fireblade and Shadowsun. Because he then has the ability to be safe for longer. Like, your opponent gets a sightline, he gets a sightline. You can't... There's sometimes that just happens. But at least you've got the means to not just stand out in the open, dick in hand, going, ha-ha! No one's going to kill a 4-up Pathfinder! Ha-ha-ha! And yeah, so Pathfinders at the moment just aren't it, and I really hope they get some love in the Codex. I really, really do.
Yeah. Games Workshop were like, stop complaining, we gave you a 4-up save, not a 5-up.
I mean, kind of, yeah. Let's not encourage that.
I'm just like, yeah, thanks.
Now, I'm thinking that they're not bad enough to get Swamp Past, because they do have... I would almost think just above Kroot in Lesser Evil.
Yes. Because they can't have a Fireblade join them. They can't boost their shots on their guns.
The Pulse Accelerated drone is goddamn useless. Who took AP for 6 inches of range, which isn't even their job to start with? Like, yeah.
Look, if I'm clutching at straws for a plus 6 inch range to get some extra 20 shots out of these guys, you're getting desperate, homie.
Yeah, they are on the cusp of just a few key changes, making them into the good category. But yeah, I think top of Lesser Evil. But still, I stand by what I said. If people are looking at improving their game and doing it piece by piece, then plugging them in to go, okay, you know what? Observing is no longer a point of skill expression. I haven't learned that. I haven't done that. I am learning my order of activations. I'm learning my matchups at tournaments against better players. I think that is still a perfectly fine reason to somebody say that I want to take those.
Yep.
So,
great, good training wheels is what I call them.
Mate, I'm stealing that and telling people I came up with it. There is no video evidence that you said it first.
Come on, mate, make it believable. Just tell them you wrote the whole codex.
I actually said at the end of the Forge World rant, I'm like, G-Dub, I will happily let you pay me to help you out with writing the goddamn codex.
Yeah.
Mate, Krootox riders, which are just such a model that I love the concept of. I think we need a new model, honestly. And for 35 points, they stayed at 35 for this data slate, didn't they? What's your thought on them? I've never run one, but strictly from a stat perspective and whatever else, I go, okay, probably better than 4 Kroot Hounds if I'm just holding objectives or strat reserving to walk on and do stuff, because it actually has OC, but what do you think?
I think they're either a points drop or a small little tweak to any one of their profiles. They're one thing away from being good. at the moment, I really only find their value is conflicting with Kroot Hounds for a toughness and OC, trading for a smaller footprint. So
yeah, I get the impression reading their abilities that it was written by somebody who doesn't has an understanding of what it probably should be, but doesn't actually understand the role of the model, or hasn't envisioned what it could be to the point that we got something which is just not like shattering people's worlds, but just makes sense. And I feel like it suffers from a conceptual rules problem rather than anything else. Because I mean, profile wise, it's not terrible. It just doesn't have enough to back it up. So I would actually put this guy probably below the carnivores, but still in lesser evil. It's an option. It's 35 points. Nobody's probably going to punish you that badly for filling in 35 points with that. But that's enhancement territory for another unit. That's a unit of 4 Kroot Hounds, which maybe could be a little bit more annoying.
Look, they've made it into some of my lists purely the fact that, I've written a list since 1995 and I got a unit of Kroot Hounds. I might just bump them up to one Kroot Rider. Or, I'm 10 points over and I got an Ethereal, I'll drop him back to a Kroot Rider. So
there's you can't have 10 points left over. It'll break my brain and I'll go hunting people and just you need 2,000 clean. Kroot Hounds, my beautiful boys, hit with OC 0 and lost AP off their melee attacks. Really, really reduced what I want to do with them. They're still great as a move blocking piece, and I've done that plenty. But they don't have as much attached to them that now it's either run out, hide in obnoxious places, and plan to get secondaries from tacticals, or just stand out in the open, move block, people die. Which, at the moment, it doesn't feel like enough for them to be anything other than just a point filler because you got nothing else.
Yes. I mean, they got a 9-inch scout now, which is nice.
Yeah.
I guess, a little bit better than the 7. But it doesn't make them good.
Not at all. And that actually physically hurts me to say. But
yes.
Again, I think that these guys are an OC1 change of being very, very bottom of good and going up into greater good. Because for a unit this cheap,
I fear that an OC bump would also bump up their points.
It may do. But to be honest, if we're going up I don't know, you wouldn't do 1 point per model because they try and keep it in increments of 5. But, if the unit goes up to 35 points, whatever increment that is, I think there is a world where I might even still pay that. Because they are much faster than the Kroot Rider, and they do... they technically fill different roles, even though at the moment you use them for kind of the same thing. Yes.
I think as soon as they go up to OC, if they go to OC1 and at 35 points each or that ballpark, then the Kroot Riders are redundant. Or even more redundant than they are.
And actually, if they're going to get a point bump, the Kroot need to get their AP back and they need OC1. If I'm going to accept a point bump to take them, they need that back.
Yes. But as they stand... they're okay as just having some bodies. If you have multiple units of Kroot Hounds in your list, you're playing tactical. It's really you.
Yeah, straight up. Yep. Okay, so then let's go to another unit that has been a little bit love-hate, Vespid. Vespid, I did like, but there is a specific wording on their ability that just makes me go... Why are we the only unit that does this? Where we go up at the end of our movement phase or our turn.
Movement phase,
not at the end of our enemy's turn. And for 75 points, their guns aren't bad. They shoot okay, but that's not the role that you take them for. If they change that ability, if they just change the wording to end of your opponent's turn, I might actually plug these guys into a lot more lists. That gives you so much flexibility. When I was on T-Suns for the teams event that I played Liam, the Demon Prince with Wings, being able to do that caused so many of my opponents' headaches. And having a unit that can leapfrog like that really creates more tactical decision-making. End of your movement phase, why would I think at the start of my movement phase that I couldn't get somewhere and then have to go up when I can pre-measure. Like, this isn't a game where you withhold information and roll the dice to see how far your base movement is, and if you don't get it, oh well. I feel like they've been done a little dirty. They have a great data sheet for everything but the ability.
Yeah, look, I guess certainly the silver lining is being old sculpts is they're probably going to get a bit of a glow up in the new book.
Yeah.
So
I hope so. I really, really hope so.
Yes.
So yeah, I feel like they have to go into lesser evil. I'm not sure exactly where.
Yeah, look, I think the where and lesser evil is not too important. They're not as bad as Swamp Pass, but they're not good.
Yeah. Before we get into talking about two of our premier units, I've noticed the chat is furiously scrolling to the side. I apologize, everybody. I won't be able to be as interactive as I am, just to make this, because otherwise we will be going for like 4 hours, and I know for a fact that, Hayden doesn't have that sort of time. He's got kids. I'm, not. So I get to just go to bed whenever I want. I don't get punished for it. He has people jumping on his chest. So but I've seen a couple of things that I want to respond to. First thing is, one of my wonderful viewers has to go to work. Will this be posted anywhere? Yes, it will. I will have this posted as a YouTube post. I will also have it on my Pantheon Studios Facebook page. So this will be up somewhere. And somebody was asking about Onvar. I apologize. Onvar, Onshi, and the two other variants of commanders. This tier list I didn't notice when I opened it up, and it was a little bit too late in the process. I didn't have them. We did speak about it, so it's right at the start of the VOD, so you won't have to go too far. I'll even, if I can, see if I can edit it to put in chapters for people. I haven't done that with a live broadcast yet, but I'll work out how to do that. But also to my YouTube members, my patrons, and all the people in the chat, hello to everybody from all the parts of the world. Thank you for being here. Hayden, let's talk about the Piranha. Because, oh boy, do I love this model.
Yeah, look, I struggle to write a list without piranhas. They're probably one of our best annoyance pieces. They got the scout move that they didn't have in previous editions. They're cheap little seeker missile caddies. They're good spotters. You probably run the fusion on them.
I absolutely do. Melter 4 on a unit that I can almost guarantee I will run up turn 1 into somebody's face with a scout move and then 14 inches of movement. I popped a little armature with each of my 3 piranhas, like just one after the other. And that was a little bit above because I succeeded on my either damage rolls for the Seekers or, the fusions went off twice. And I'm just like, oh, hey, so this is a Melter 4 shot. And then I roll the damage and I don't think I rolled below a 3, which meant that just instantly 7 damage. And
I'm even toying with the idea of running 3x3 or even 3x2.
Mate, I would love to. I do it's so it's 55 points each, which puts the entire combo at 165. And for 3 bodies for, and it's not going to take the place of the Fish of Fury, but that is the same price as a Breacher Devilfish combo, which is very, very reasonable for what it does. This thing, 3 T7 bodies with 7 wounds, with all of those profiles that we mentioned before, each unit holding potentially 6 Seeker missiles. And you got 3 of them on the board and you haven't even take up a quarter of your list?
Yeah, they're money. You should be running at least 2 singles.
Yes, I haven't had a list with less than 3 singles.
Yeah.
And this sort of feeds into what I was talking about before, where the Piranha in a post-Montcar world, these are my first contact units. These are my move blockers. These are my run-up, fusion you in the face, dump the Seekers, because I'm not really expecting them to live past that turn. So I want to get maximum value, and if it dies, you killed 55 points, my dude. Awesome. Good for you. Here's everything running behind it with, by the way, exploding 6s on turn 2 because of Exemplar of the Cow Yun. I am such a fan of these models. It is so fantastic. If you have the means to get piranhas, absolutely do. Now, that in context of once we get the Codex, we don't know what's going to change. That is potentially up to half a year away. And Piranhas, at the very least, I find is actually one of our more unique models. There's not a lot of actual, like, skimmer bike equivalent sort of things. Yeah. Big fan of the Piranhas. I am happy to have them in Greatest Good. Would you agree with that, Hayden?
100%.
Okay. We'll mess around with positions based on who our favourites are and whatever else a little bit later on. Let's go to our other skimmer unit, which I'm just going to go and say it. Like, they have to be up here. Not for any reason. Like, they're very similar to the Piranhas. They come in units of 2 for more points. They're 80 points, so a little more expensive. The guns are whatever. They come with the Markerlight keyword, and they should, because their ability is high intensity Markerlight. Full rerolls to hit for the unit that they're guiding. When we are forced into a detachment with exploding 6s or double exploding 6s, full rerolls to hit, even as good as it is outside of that. Oh boy. I hit a Warden unit turn 2 for 104 shots.
Feels good.
Oh, it felt bad when he spiked his saves and 1.5 models died because he popped his 4-up Feel No Pain for the once per game. But still, 104 shots! It just...
Yes. Look,
yeah.
they're good. Get yourself some units of Tetras. I'd like at least one. At the very, very minimum, I think you need one. Because you need to be able to put them in reserve if they can die early. They still get they have the infiltrator rule, so they can posture up behind a ruin and just chill there until you need them. You don't have to expose them if you don't want to. I think they're very good.
And point of note, our army rule doesn't have a range attached to it. If you have a 1 mil line from any point of this model to any point of their model, you can see them and you can guide them. So, and this is the game plan that I've generally had, because I like running 2 or 3 of them. Or 2 or 3 units of 2. So one goes into strat reserve immediately. No matter what happens through the course of the game, I have one that is going to walk on and is going to guide later in the game. The only time that I'll have him start on the board is if I am super confident I'm just going to club the hell out of the player that I'm playing. But with the others sitting on the board, all I need is just minimal exposure. And especially if you're doing good things that you should be doing as Tau players, pre-measuring everything, you'll know how many guns they can reasonably get into range of you if they pull the trigger on that. If I'm confident that it's just a bunch of bolters and whatever else, they're going to be wounding a T7 body on 5s, and there are 2 of them, then I'm more than happy just to tow out of a back building and go, cool, I can see you, I've exposed nothing, full rerolls to hit. Done.
Yep. Great stat check little unit for small arms fire. And making people have a choice between putting their anti-tank gun into your support pieces or your scoring pieces in, like, your breach fish.
Absolutely.
Very good choices.
Absolutely. Now, let's go to stuff that is not good choices. We have tactical drones, my man. Now, in my index review, all I said about tactical drones was a 10-second laugh, and then I moved on.
In a world of sweeping points decreases for the Codex, I don't understand why they didn't get a points decrease. Because, I mean, there's a world, right? There's a reality out there that if they get a points decrease by, it has to be significant. It has to be at least a 30-point decrease. Then running units of them would probably be viable.
I think even at 40 points, because they're OC0 and they have no other stat lines. Like, we have other stuff that offers, walk on the board and score points, as well as blah. I can't see a world where I take a unit of attack drones, which are 20 points more expensive than an Ethereal, and the Ethereal has a fitty of getting me CP. And has a 5-up invulnerable save, and did I mention he tanked 3 las cannon shots? I'm not biased, you're biased. Tac drones are just, they are the big question mark that made me wonder what wrote our index. And I say very tactically.
I kind of feel like Games Workshop are like, all right, drones are all tokens now. Oh, we do have a unit of gun drones. Oh, I guess they better be able to put them on the table. Let's just point them out so they never put them on the table anyway.
I honestly, I think you're right. And like, I actually pointed to, in the index review, I actually said the removal of drones and what they spoke about in the index seemed to be a very pointed PR move, because GW are aware of how Tau are perceived in the community and on tables and everything else. And nobody liked pumping a bunch of shots into crisis suits and you being like, cool, 2 shield drones are dead. And yeah, so I wish I had a category below Swamp Ass. I don't think Swamp Ass is kind enough for these guys. And I kind of feel bad for On-Shi, the Kroot Shaper, and the Fast Stalkers that they have to share a category with them. But, yeah. Enough said about the tactical drones. Pour one out because they could have been an interesting unit. Let's go to the Hammerhead. Now, I can't tell you the number of people I've had private message me to tell me that saying, people please don't take Hammerheads, as being a personal attack, and that they're actually good, and at their LGS, they killed this, and they killed that, and they killed whatever else. Now, obviously, not everybody is that obnoxious. There have been people that have had reasonable questions about it. And it is an interesting one, because on paper, a Hammerhead doesn't actually look terrible. But there are some fundamental things that mean that it is either outshone, or it is just outright bad from a competitive standpoint. Hayden, I am really keen to hear your thoughts on this bad boy.
I think on paper, they're fine. They got their points decrease, but they're in the same ballpark as their other sort of heavy support tank competitor. And when you're comparing apples to apples, when you compare it to something like a Skyray, I think it leans more towards the Ion Top when you compare it to a Skyray. And I think an Ion Top's better than a Skyray.
Interesting.
But I don't want to take one, because I don't want to have to get to a table where my only anti-tank is Seeker missiles and I'm struggling to crack a Rhino. But the D6 plus 3 shots with Blast, that's where you bring your damage 3 when you overcharge it. You still get your Terminator killers. But in a world where some Terminators have -1 to wound, like Paladins, and your other -1 to wound.
T-Sun's Terminators jump out to mind. Yep.
Like your Lich Guard, that sort of stuff. You're putting them back to winning on 4s. It just puts them back into a sort of redundant category. So I think they're good on paper, probably not functional on the table.
And the railgun, which should be the reason you take a Hammerhead, not ignoring invulnerable saves. There's been plenty of people that are like, oh, but it doesn't matter, But there are so few things that I find that I am needing a Hammerhead for that don't carry an invulnerable save. And all they need to do is spike that, one save, potentially with a CP reroll. And all of a sudden, what are you going to do? Like,
if someone's going to CP reroll a save, they're doing it for a Hammerhead shot.
Absolutely. And Devastating Wounds isn't enough. It is absolutely not enough, because you are going to hit that not even 1 out of 6 times. Like, the maths is not that straightforward so far as I'm aware, especially with me, because 1 is my number. It's not 6. If Devastating Wounds was on a 1, you're like, I would be the highest ranked Tau player in the world. So yeah, like, and it's, I feel like this guy falls firmly into lesser evil because he should be good. There's just a few key things that are stopping him from being there.
I feel like he's one of the few Tau units that pre-data slate was better than post-data slate. Purely because of the Dev Wound change.
Yes. And
where, taking 3 pre-data slate, you'd probably have an alright chance of hitting that 6. And you'd probably save your reroll from the Hammerhead chassis for the wound to try and fish for that 6, because you're wounding like almost everything on 2s. But now with the Dev Wound change, I don't think it's really worth it. So you lean towards the Hammerhead with the Ion, and it's sort of it's a bit clunky.
Yeah, but even then, as you said, you feel bad for actually taking it, which isn't a reason to put something into a list, which is kind of, yeah. And I really feel like this is one of the places where I can point out the crippling lack of keywords in our index. Because a keyword to go into that for your intended target on a railgun immediately puts it into the realm of I would want to take it. Just one little line of text would add to the dev wounds in such an appreciable way. And it's not like they don't want to do it for other armies. There are plenty of other armies that have multiple keywords. So, yeah. Now, the Skyray, you mentioned that before, and I think doing these two at the same time is a good view of where one thing outshines the other, because the Skyray for me is at least in good. Not sure exactly where, but I do like this unit, and I believe it has more of a place than the Hammerhead does.
Yes, again, there's a layer of redundancy for the Skyray where it has a mark-like keyword and wants to guide, but when it's guiding without being able to daisy chain now, you're sort of back to hitting on fours.
Yep.
Hoping you're targeting something with rerolls, but three main shots from its gun. Can't take Seekers as one use only.
Yep.
It's just stuck with its three top shots. It kind of wants to be guided, and then it won't ignore cover, so it's effectively AP2, not AP3. And
now it's not just three top shots, is it? Because I think that got changed. Isn't it D3 plus something?
pretty sure it's just flat 3.
Double check for me, because this is where, and I'll need to start rote learning this because I will actually have Skyrays very soon, which I haven't before, which is really exciting.
Yeah, no, just flat 3 shots.
Just flat 3 shots. Okay, I must have been reading something else.
Last edition was D3 shots.
Yeah, which is still nice because Seeker Missiles being very good put onto Devilfish and Piranhas and whatever else, it's the same profile which we're happy with the one shot. So you do get more value over the course of a game. And it still does have, to my knowledge, a lot of the Hammerhead chassis rules of like being able to re-roll something and whatever. And as you accurately pointed out, Markalite on it means that there is at least some flexibility for this guy. And it actually surprises me that the Hammerhead doesn't have that. As somebody who's ex-military, when you work with the tankies, they have a massive hard-on for like pointing stuff out and like, oh yeah, our turret could see this and it could do that and whatever. So it's not out of the realm of being reasonable that your tanks, if you're giving up being able to guide for themselves, that they spot for another unit. They have the technology built into their stuff to be able to do it. So yeah.
Look, to be honest, if Games Workshop were like, you get 5 minutes to change this codex, don't go stupid, I'd be like, all right, let's go to the Hammerhead and Skyray. Let's change their abilities. So Hammerhead getting +1 to hit against monsters. Let's change that to anti-monster and vehicle on its turret weapon only.
Yep.
Like, give it like anti-4+, you know? So
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Not insane. Still gives it its purpose. And Skyrays, instead of having reroll to hit against fly, give it anti-fly.
Anti-fly would be fantastic. I think with an army rule like ours, like there are other ways to get rerolls, other units that we want it for. You don't need that synergy. It's I
don't need a Hammerhead to hit on 2s with the reroll. I'd be happy for it to guide it and hit on 3s.
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
So that's my issue with them.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty accurate assessment. The Skyray is definitely better. I'm looking forward to playing them. They are a good tech piece, but in a world where I can spam certain other things, cough, or crisis units putting out like with explodes over 100 shots or whatever, like I dropped a big night, turn 2 with a crisis bomb. And like volume will a lot of the time win the day. They are nice as an additive. And I like that they have additive. I've expressed multiple times that I like having a mixed arms force to put on the table. Now, our other railgun, let's talk about the broadsides. Because I mentioned before, I've been flirting with these guys a bit, and I'm a big fan of their data sheet. Even with the weird, like, here's a 4-up against mortals for kind of no reason. But I actually quite like them. They do have a little bit of a skill cap with how slow they are and now being vehicles. But what's your assessment of them? I'm keen to see if you've actually plugged them into a list.
Yes, I like units of 2. So it's not too big of a... now with their point structure, it's not too big of a point sink. And we were taking them pre-data slate because we kind of had to.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were kind of there for the big stuff, Knights, Imperial Knights, and Wraith Knights and all that jazz. The points decrease is great. The missile drones having AP2 on their missiles is great. They're always going to be guided, so the missiles will then go to Ballistic Skill 4, not Ballistic Skill 5.
Yep.
Just gives them extra bit of volume. If you really want, you can go 1 shield, 1 missile. If you really want that 9 wounds, but that's more of a meta choice for like a tipping point of what's a common damage.
I have enjoyed in my games telling somebody that they're a 2-up save 10 wounds each, and so they've got to chew through 30 wounds on a 3-man unit, and just watching the soul leave their body.
Having 2/2s on the flanks is really good, or one in a commanding firing lane, the other in reserve.
Yep.
Just to keep people on their toes about where they're putting stuff, so you can't get angles on them. That's quite helpful, and it's not too big of a point sink.
Yeah. I've been a big fan of the broadsides. I've been playing mostly shield drones, as the meta that I was playing in had a bunch of like very, very fast stuff that if I let them could get up and potentially just like pop one off. And with these guys, even though they're 30 wounds in total, these guys like let's say a bad example, but a Stormsurge doesn't lose shots off its gun when it loses wounds. But a broadside, you lose a model, all of a sudden that anti-tank unit is firing less shots. But having said that, the missile drones have stuck out because, and this came up in my Discord, and I've seen this a couple of times, drones are just war gear now, so they go off, if you have guiding and rerolls and everything else, they absolutely get that. There's no night stuff where drones have their own keywords and we're exclusive from other benefits of the crisis units or whatever we're getting. You absolutely get the benefits on those. So being able to send those extra shots can be a really, really good piece. I tend to take ignore modifiers and modifiers to hit and wound. Ignore any or all modifiers to hit. I would love modifiers to wound. That'd be fantastic. Probably too strong. But have you really teched into any of their other war gear? Do you tend to take the plasma or the fall back and shoot? Where do you find yourself landing?
I find the best is Rail Plasma Seeker. And then 1 missile, 1 shield.
Okay. Yep.
That's where I find the most diversity in a singles meta, because they sort of have a bit of a jack of all trades. Then they got the 9 wounds for the tipping point for any 3 damage. It's pretty easy to spike 1/6 from the like if you're on a pain strat on 3 damages. It sort of makes one of those valid saves a bit redundant. That was quite helpful. Not as necessary now that sort of Wraith Knights are probably going to go away, or their dev wounds have changed.
I would agree.
So, but still a great profile on the railgun, and I still think it puts the fear of God in any vehicle or monster. So
yeah, I definitely like the broadsides. I think that as far as an anti-tank option, I actually think they're our premier anti-tank at the moment. I quite like them. I would be happy to put them in greater good.
Yes, so would I.
Now the Riptide, who is not going in greater good, he's a naughty, naughty boy. What happened with this guy, man? Like, we were at the end of 9th, we were rocking like double or triple Riptides.
I have 8 Riptides on my shelf.
What? Oh, wait, did you play when you could have like the Riptide wing, where you had 1 billion of them? Oh, mate. The fact that this guy's gun didn't change from 9th to 10th still wakes me up at night screaming.
You know what? I'd be happy with the exact same gun if they kept their Nova.
The Nova was good. Yes.
Even if the Nova was once per game, it could be once per game, but instead of the dev wounds, keep it as what it was in the last book, and I'd be happy. Kind of as it stands, especially with the dev wound change, you probably pushed more to the burst cannon side just to fish for those 6s and just be a bit more of not a screen killer, but just more of a chip damage sort of thing.
And it does become like a marine killer that can also put some volume into something. I do think those, again, lack of keywords, the heavy burst cannon, if they put like an anti-infantry 3+ or whatever, and an anti-vehicle 4+ on the Ion, I would be extremely happy with that. But I hard agree with the Nova thing. I think the 9th Nova charge ability hit all the right notes, and it feels like change for the sake of change.
Yes, and their defensiveness doesn't sort of stack up to where they are on the the suit scale. So I still think a Ghostkeel is tougher. Ghostkeel might have 1 point. Might have 1 point less in toughness, but the 2 blanking is well worth more than
enormous. And stealth on top of it, and lone op.
Lone op.
And that's the big comparison that I make, is that why would I ever take a Riptide, which even after points reductions is more expensive than a Ghostkeel, when I can just slam 3 Ghostkeels? Why would I ever take this model? And I am bordering on arsing this thing.
So the only way, because I've thought about how I could make them work, and the only way I could ever see them working is running them, again, extremely aggressive, because they can fall back and shoot and ignore modifiers.
Yep.
They can split their weapons when they shoot, because they ignore the debuff from Greater Good.
Yep.
So they can split without copying the neg 1. And again...
Oh, no, they can't. You get -1 ballistic skill.
Oh, sorry, yes, no, so they don't ignore that.
Yep.
But again, like, they're just... Maybe they run alongside some Ghostkeels and alongside your fish, and alongside your piranhas, and... you could have like 10 plus vehicles just tagging every single thing in your opponent's army. Mix that with a couple of battle shock tests. As soon as you make someone fail one, you dogpile onto it, so it falls back and takes some desperate breakouts. So you're getting a couple of free kills.
Yep.
Still feel bad to put 180 points into.
Yeah, I would agree. And it sucks because, as you rightly pointed out, there is a game plan that you can sort of lean into, but then when you sit back and go, okay, that's my combo, and you actually examine your list up against maybe another, more optimized list, and you go, there are maybe aside from points efficiencies, there are maybe 4 different combos I can do in this one, and I don't feel like the Riptide one outshines those. So,
not at all.
Yeah, I want to ask this thing, but by the sounds of things, you've got a game plan for it which wouldn't put it in Swamp Ass. It's not completely useless. I want to do it out of spite, but yeah, where do you think we should throw this?
I think it goes to Demon. I think it goes to the bottom of Demon. I wish it was better.
We did not need the changes to the Nova ability. I feel like Nova ability goes back to 9th. It's here. Maybe even higher.
Yeah, I think it's there as a minimum.
Yeah.
But yes.
All right, now my beloved, my Stormsurge, my Reptar, who actually you might be able to see up the back. Him and his wife are chilling up against the hammer.
Oh, yeah.
It was a recent ceremony. They're pretty happy. They're debuting this weekend as Mr. and Mrs. Reptar.
Nice.
And thank you to Chris O'Neill for just kind of leaving his models with me and being like, yeah, use them, happy. Stormsurge, even though I adore and I love, it's okay, but it is such a point sink. And for what you get, especially with the towering change now, it's good. It's great that you get to tow onto a ruin and be able to see through it. I always hated the you must be wholly within in order to shoot out of it. It was so dumb. And yes, you could get around it by being on the side of the building and being able to draw off a point of the model that's not going through the ruin. But just, yeah. The guns are great. There is nothing wrong with its output. It does similar things to the Riptide where it can ignore modifiers to hit. If it's shooting against something Titanic or Towering, it gets full rerolls to hit, which is great. And if you're in a Knights meta, I guess. Having said that, though, as much as I love it, it does kind of need to go into Lesser Evil, if only from a points perspective. This got butchered, and same with the Towner, spoiler alert, from Eldari abusing Towering and everything else just copying. GW lined up every Towering unit and just slapped it in a chain like a 90s movie. Is there anything from that statement you would disagree with, my man?
The output. It grinds my gears that the Destroyer missiles is one shot.
Yes. Yes, and actually,
Yeah.
there's a distinct lack of AP on a lot of its guns, where you look at like a railgun or whatever else. I got a big ass pulse blast cannon that's as big as a hammerhead, and it's AP 2 and AP 4 on a 24-inch gun. That thing should be able to like out of line of sight, Coriolis effect curve the earth and hit something.
Yeah, look, I ran a lot of Stormsurge at the start of 9th when we got our 9th book. I ran a lot of triple surge lists.
Yeah. You're one of the people that got us nerfed, you asshole.
I even felt bad myself. I brought one in from Strat Reserve in a little RTT, rolled double sixes on a Chaos Knight and did 48 damage to it. And the guy just walked away from the table. He just stopped and walked away from the table. I was like, bye. So yes, they're definitely a shadow of their former self.
Oh! And that is something that you can look at doing. I think the bases that they're on with the new can't do anything if you come on and your base is bigger than 6 inches. They're only like 4 inches across, aren't they? If you're not trying to stand like long ways. I'm pretty sure they're like 4.5 inches. Yeah, I would be surprised if that's 6 inches. Don't ask me how I know what 6 inches looks like, but
yeah, no, they can walk on from Zerv and do stuff. That stuff is quite minimal.
Yeah, but yeah, when I look at it, I'm like, there are so many better things I could do that with. Broadsides leap out to me. Yeah, I love them, and because I hate myself, I'm running 2 of them on the weekend, but I think I'm going to come out of those games, even if I win, just being like, I had so many places where I was like, if I had X unit with X unit with X unit, this game plan just falls into place. And I've built a list that's still going to be able to score well. I'm worried about what I pick up. And it's very swingy, as you accurately pointed out.
Yes, I'm disappointed that you can get like 4 broadsides for 1 Stormsurge. But you know, I think any lower costing on them makes them too spammable. So I think if they're staying at 400 points, they have to have better guns. If they're getting cheaper, they're abusing core mechanics of the game.
Yeah, I agree. Especially when compared up to stuff like Wraith Knights and what Knights got on their data sheets and everything else. He doesn't line up. Now, the Taunar had a little bit of a moment in the sun, and he was very, very exciting. And because I hate myself, I'm still gonna do it because again, Chris O'Neill, you amazing fucking baller, gave me a non-put together Taunar because it was damaged and it'd take a lot to sell it and whatever else. So he's just like, hey man, just run it. At least it'll get on a table. This thing, unfortunately, it got nerfed so badly that putting it into a list is almost a death sentence.
Yeah, look, there was a point where I was looking for cheap alternatives to just put 1 or 2 on the table.
Oh yeah, of course you were.
My local meta caps are Forge at 500 points a model, so I can't field one of my local meta anyway.
Right,
yeah,
okay.
So Gladiator Gaming, one of the big tournament organisers here in Queensland, run by Josh McGowan, who held ATC last year.
Yeah.
He has a 500-point cap on individual Forger models.
Okay, all right.
Which I think is quite healthy for the game because it stopped things like Townars when they were big, like Bio Titans and all sorts of stupid stuff you don't really want in like the competitive scene because it's a bit of a joke.
And with the towering rules as they were, if people weren't playing the WTC first floor completely blocked out so people could actually like hide, this thing picks up everything it looks at. I was looking at the guns from across the table. There is nothing that lives against this if I get first turn.
No, it's crazy.
Yeah, and with the towering change now, not only getting slapped with points, but also not being able to see through ruins and everything else. Yes, it can tow on. It's only got an 8-inch move speed.
Slow.
And with buildings and how most decent tournament tables are, you've also got to pay for rotation moving around things. He has a real hard time. Hard time. So, unfortunately, I don't think he's Swamp Ass because his output is phenomenal. But it's everything else that puts him, in my mind, even below a Riptide in Demon.
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. The Ravana. Now, I have freshly come off doing a Forge World stream, so I am Mr. Expertise on this stuff. Don't hold me to that. The Ravana, I want to get your opinion before I go into it because I've expressed mine very recently. Have you played these? Are you a fan of them? Would you take them to a list? Let's give the viewers a little bit of context before I jump in with my hot takes.
So I have 2 of each of the Fancy Forged Tides. I haven't played them in this edition, but they had seen some play in recent editions, and what they are now is not what they used to be. And or this one at least, hits some common problems that the normal Riptide has, except his Nova ability is slightly better situational, but still not enough to make me want to take him.
Yep, I would agree with that. I would actually put him sort of below the Riptide. He's not as egregious as the Town are because it's not as aggressively costed, though it is quite aggressively costed for what it does. The Ravana, I found, was one of the more underwhelming things, especially in the category that it had to compete with within its role. I just don't think it offers enough. I really don't. It needs a data sheet bump. It needs a point reduction. There's a lot of things wrong with it. I really, really hope, and I know it's not the trend, but I really hope when we get our codex, that our Forge World stuff gets a decent amount of love, because there is some cool stuff within that Imperial Field Manual. The Yavara, however, I have a little bit of I'm going to call it a half chub for this model. It caught me by surprise, honestly, when I was reviewing it.
Yes, I like them. They did get a points reduction with the Riptide, little handshake they got. Their Nova ability is cool. They get to move 18 once per game. Pretty cool. Pretty sure they have Deep Strike.
I don't think so. I think that's one of the criticisms I had for it. Unless I didn't see that.
They used to have Deep Strike, so that with that being taken away from them is a bit sad. Their guns are fine. 10 shots in their flame is pretty cool.
The flamer I was looking at, I was like, oh my god. And also, I really love the name of it. Yeah. What is it? The something phased plasma.
Phase plasma flamer, yeah.
That's it, phase plasma. Oh,
it's like a triple barrel Y-shaped flamer. It's actually pretty cool. But the model is actually sick.
Yeah, and like looking at the model, I had a problem with the spindly, like weedy dude that shows up to a gym thinking he's big, but like walks around near all the other big guys thinking he's the same. The Yavara, I like him girthy. Let's throw that out there right now. It's got a little bit of girth to it. And the guns actually look fantastic. And it sits more in like the Ravana looked very alien from the normal suit aesthetic. This one follows it while still being distinctly unique, which I quite like as well. I am actually going to put this in good because I would run this. One of them, have a plan for it, and sort of like use it in a very, very specific way and not feel bad about doing it. But would you agree with that, or would you want to drop it down?
I'd like to drop it down solely for the purpose that it has a 5+ invulnerable save, not a 4+, like the rest.
That is a
That's my only
consideration.
gripe.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's kind of what I was talking about, that like it necessitates, it's good that it's got the 18-inch move because you goddamn need it, because you're not having it sit there and tank stuff. You're using it at the appropriate moment, but if somebody gets onto it before that, it is very likely that it's going to take a shitload of damage or die. I am happy to put it... Actually... You know what? You got breaches above, so I'm gonna have a veto here. It is on the bottom of good, burgeoning into lesser evil. But my bias is gonna win this one to keep it in this category because I kind of love it a little bit.
I'll give you that one. I'll give that one to you.
Now, mate, the Remoras broke my heart. I went through. I was doing the Vince McMahon meme, whereas I read more, and I read more, and I read more. I just kept leaning back in my chair, screaming, and then I got to its points. I have not seen such an aggressively costed unit, I think, maybe in the entire index. But everything else looks so good. I just wouldn't pay that many points for it.
Remora drones, I feel personally attacked by Remora drones. So because they were so good at one point in ninth. They were really nice before the aircraft change came in. You can only take 2 aircraft models, which was a shame. But before that change came in, I took my Skyray turrets and I chopped them up and I turned them into Remora drones.
That is a power move.
Yeah, because they're the same size, they look kind of similar, and they have all the same sort of features. And I had a couple of little spare engines from like Piranhas, and I chopped them up and I turned them into Remora drones.
That's cool.
And then Remora,
that's cool.
Yeah, and then we had the addition change. Remora drones are trash, and Skyrays are okay. I'm like, fuck, my Skyray turrets are now Remora drones.
Could you put the Remoras just on top of a Devilfish chassis and just be like, hey, look at my fancy Skyray?
No, I chopped them all up and then glued the wings of the Skyray on the side and actually like put some effort into them to make it look like Remora drones.
Yeah,
so Games Lecture saw it and they were like, nice try, buddy.
But just, they're sitting at like 160 points, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yep.
And 160 points for 0 OC, first and foremost. And we've seen what that's like in this current edition. But everything else looks so good. The something lands within 9 inches, get to move. I was talking about, before I saw the points, what you can do with that to like, especially if somebody's not great with their order of activation and does something first and you just go, cool. All of a sudden, this thing over here that was wanting to charge or get an objective or whatever else, you don't get to move that now because I am blocking off where you needed to walk. Or I'm going to come and get you and the same thing Eldari do. You go, cool, whoop, I'm just behind a wall.
Yep. Look,
I love it.
Infiltrator, stealth, Mark Light, twin link burst cannons, full-fledged seeker missiles. They're
decent toughness, decent wounds.
Yep, they're literally one OC away from being almost an auto take.
Yeah, but even then, even with the OC, and I was sort of musing over this, but obviously you've run them before, so I would defer to your kind of judgment on it. Even if they got OC, 160 for me is still, I feel like it's still a premium to pay for them. Is that, like, would you still be comfortable with the 160, or would it be a begrudging, they bring enough that I will do it, but I'm kind of not happy about it?
I'd begrudgingly pay it and try to make them work.
Right, okay, yep.
And this is, like, if they had one OC pre-data slate changes where we got some point drops, then it'd kind of be okay, because then they're sort of averagely costed against its peers. Now they're sort of a bit too expensive, but like 140 for 2 and an OC each, and I'd take them.
I think I would agree, but at the moment, I'm going to put them in lesser evil and above some of the worst stuff because they are so close. They are so close.
They are on the cusp.
Now let's move into our aircraft. Now, this one, I believe, is the AX-10, which the AX-10, when compared up to its cousin, the just Tiger Shark, it is kind of night and day in my mind after reading the profiles, because the AX-10 is more expensive, has less guns, and I think it's on the same base size, so unless you're playing the WTC base sizing rule, does nothing when it comes in from Strat Reserve in turn 2.
Yeah, I mean, you're sort of paying a premium for the anti-Titanic 3-up.
Which really, how much are we seeing that? We're not really in a Titanic meta.
No. So look, I'd be putting it in Demon.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
There's too many variables that would need to happen to put it up. You need to be playing WTC base sizes.
Yep.
You need to own the gigantic fucking model. It's huge.
And it is not cheap. I went on to Forge World in that stream and had a look at it. I am not ready to have my first kid just to sell them to get an AX1. Like, it cannot happen. Having said that, though, one that does give me pause is the Tiger Shark. Now, this thing, its stat line was amazing. And for the points that you pay, I was thinking of leaving Chelsea, becoming a stripper, earning as much money as I can, and then being able to afford this thing, or maybe multiples of them. Because, like, you know, like, I saw the transport bay and then had a good old fucking cackle when I saw that it was for tac drones. But you could swap it out for 2 of the, what is it, the Sky Spear missile racks or whatever it is.
Missiles.
And it's got an amazing set of choices of guns, like 2 of the Ions, which you accurately pointed out for the Hammerhead, it's basically the same gun. But if you get 2d6 plus 6 shots from those guns with blast, and on a platform that you don't care about overcharging, you're basically going to do it every single turn. And then all of the other stuff on top of it. 6 Seeker missiles, a bunch of like really good burst cannons. Just this thing really, really caught me off guard with just how good it is.
Yeah, I mean, and then you could also go the other way by putting double swift strikes on it, keeping burst cannons on the wing, and just rocking in and dumping about 50 shots, plus the blast.
And it benefits from the greater good. Like, there's nothing that says our aircraft don't. Double exploding 50 shots, that's Crisis Squad territory.
But I think its true value is slapping the double railguns on it, just keeping the standard sort of railguns on it, because of flyers having the old, essentially towering line of sight rule. So because of the size of it, as soon as you come on, you can see everything on the table.
Ruins do not stop you from seeing stuff.
No.
It is awesome.
Yes, I'm toying a list with 2 of them.
Oh, you bad man.
And
how do you sleep at night?
Usually on my left side and nice and comfortably wrapped up in a blanket.
My favorite answer to somebody saying that to me is comfortably next to your dad. So, like, the Tiger Shark, I would actually like to put in greater good. I think if you've got the money for it, you've got the model, and you can make a game plan around it, which you absolutely can. Yes, if you're not playing the WTC base sizing stuff, it can't do anything on the first turn that comes in. Having said that, I would be more than happy to put it right at the back of the board in my deployment zone and then fly it over next turn. Because a lot of the time, if I'm controlling the board decently, and this thing is not expensive enough that you lose your board control to take it, you've got stuff out there that they're worried about. And with how aggressive you play, there's probably a bunch of stuff that's been charged and isn't going anywhere. This thing is probably going to be a little bit safe unless they have a good, dedicated anti-tank that can hit and wound this flyer and do enough damage to take it down. Because it's like over 20... No, sorry, it's like...
17 wounds.
Yeah, it is not terrible. But then also, we need to talk about the rapid ingress stratagem.
Yes. So, look, in a world where you're playing a WTC format, you could probably take 2. You need to make sure you have some OC on the ground because they're OC 0.
Yes.
But if you are not playing that rule and you have to put it on its gigantic circle base, then you take 1 and you rapid ingress it at the back of the field. Because of the change to flyer rules and the models, the base has to be on the table, but your wings are allowed to overhang in this edition. So your wings can overhang the side of the table.
Which absolutely was off the table in 9th. Very, very important for people that were running the Sun Sharks. If you got caught out with that and a TO knew his stuff, that was off the board. That was not shooting, that was not doing whatever, that was gone. Yeah.
Yeah, so I had like a little T-square graphics tool thing that was like 9 inches tall, so I could just have it up against the board edge and I'd make sure my wings were inside the sort of invisible 3-dimensional wall of the table just to stop any arguments. And now I've just thrown that in the bin because I don't need it anymore. But yes, Tiger Shark, toughness 11, 3-up save, 18 wounds, 5 loss and vulnerable save base.
Yep, which on something with that much toughness and that many wounds, the 5-up is more palatable than what we were talking about with the Ravana and the Yavara. That one, they're lower in both, so you kind of need to have an invuln to give you a bit more there. And the flyer on top of that, when you bring it in, are going to bring it in a long, long way away. And actually, this is why I wanted the stealth suits where they were or higher, because stealth suits used to be, it was only crisis units that were coming in with, the deep strike stuff within range of them turn 1. Now they can rapid ingress anybody for 0 CP. You just have a unit of stealth suits tactically placed in your deployment zone and go, cool, they're within 6 inches of the edge of the board. This thing comes in, sits there. I'm ready to go. I've spent no CP. And on my next turn, I'm going to fly and I'm going to shoot the hell out of you.
Yes. They also make you take a battle shock test if they hit someone who doesn't have fly.
Oh, I forgot about that. That was so good.
Yeah.
Oh.
So you're just pinging off more battle shock tests, and they're 275 points.
Yeah. Just.
So.
Oh my god. Yeah. I am upset that I don't have one. I am upset that I don't have one. Now the
if you come to Queensland, I'll let you borrow one of mine.
Oh mate, you're a diamond. The Barracuda, I was not impressed with.
I ran 3.
You absolute animal.
And I found the sweet spot was 2.
Okay.
And 2 that fly around actually start dunking on stuff like Custodes.
Nice.
When they're guided by Tetras in Kaon, because they have a bunch of Seeker missiles, they have their railguns still. They're actually not too bad. But,
okay. So what sort of dedicated role do you find them playing? Are they a bit more of a jack of all trades? Are they something that you actually invest into in terms of resources, as you said, with Tetras and whatever? Or are they there to just kind of flex I will anti-tank you, I will anti-infantry you, you can deal with them, but I also have other stuff you've got to worry about? Like, where do you place them in your list?
I found them not good. They were just sort of like better than average at getting around walls, shooting up the backfield, stopping people, screening out for a turn 3 drop on Crisis, so you rapid ingress 1 in their turn 2. Your turn 2, you fly it over, start cleaning up their backfield, and you get angles on, things that are hiding behind walls, where like a traditional anti-tank gun, like a Skyray or Hammerhead, wouldn't be able to see them because they can't advance and shoot anymore under Montcar, so they just wouldn't get the angles on them where these things could.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now,
and they were -1 to hit base with a fire bimbo, so they had a little bit of survivability still.
Okay. Where would you put them? Because you're the only person with playing experience on them, and I was underwhelmed, but you obviously got some success out of them. Where would you reasonably place them for strictly competitive stuff?
I put them at the bottom of good.
Okay.
They have some wiggle room. They have some play. They have some, things that can be brought in to lists that aren't found elsewhere. But depending on your format and your meta, you can find them elsewhere by bumping up 50 points each to a Tiger Shark. And
gotcha.
They're essentially a Tiger Shark is essentially 2 Barracudas strapped together for an extra 50 points. So
they are just so good. All right, I need to move on from the Tiger Sharks, or I'm gonna go into a coma just thinking about them. Now our Strike Fighter, our Razor Shark.
Yes.
I kind of think it's terrible.
I've really tried to get one into a list. I tried to get 2 into a list. I admire the Greek Tower player from WTC because he ran 3.
What a mad lad.
He is a menace. So the year we took out the gold, his list was read to 7 of our 8 team members because he had a wild tower list. It was like a car park tower list. It was like triple Skyray, triple Hammerhead, like triple Devilfish, double Sun Shark. It was a menace. This year, he's sort of done the same thing. He went like triple Razor Shark, triple Ghostkeel, like super lone op abusing with flies around him.
Yep.
And I've tracked his results, but I didn't think it was the meta for them for that style list.
Okay. Yep.
But yeah, I like how the Razor Shark can be guided and hit on 2s against non-fly units because they get +1 to hit against ground units.
Yep.
Twin-linked ion guns, relatively cheap, bit tougher. They get the line of sight buff from being a flyer. But now with the points changes, I think they're overshadowed.
I think they are too. I would probably lean towards putting them in Demon because there's not enough instances that I would want to plug one into a list, even though I could make it work. But that's where would you be thinking? Do you think that's too harsh?
Nah, I'd be putting them in Demon.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to put him in between the Riptide and the Ravana just to add insult to injury. The Sunshark Bombers, menace that they were in 9th, got absolutely gutted. And I actually think the Razor Shark is infinitely better than the Sunshark now.
Yes. Yeah. The only way I ever see a Sunshark working is, again, wrapped ingress it in, hope it doesn't die,
Yeah.
try to, get a couple of mortar bombs and shoot some stuff in the backfield, and then, if it lives, it might get to do it again, but highly unlikely.
Very unlikely. Even when they were at their peak, I never had this living after it had dropped its bombs if I didn't fly it off and I wanted it to shoot at something and mark-light something. So, I think this is another Swamp Ass. I don't think there's a world where I take this thing, ever.
Look, I haven't kept it in any list that's made it to the table. So I think that's probably fair.
Now, let's talk about two of our best data sheets. We have left the drone port and the tide wall. Now, I really do need another category because, nobody should be surprised that these are going down here. You don't run them. They don't exist functionally. Even just for the fact that, a lot of events, you might not even be able to place these damn things down. Yeah.
So these are so non-existent to me. When I bought my pack of data cards from Games Workshop, I took them to the graphics department of my work and I said, hey, can you ring bind these for me? It's for a customer. Don't ask who it's for. And I said, oh, hold on. Let me just take those last 4 pages out, and ripped them and threw them in the bin. I was like, now you can ring bind them.
Now, for any of the, the Tide Wall or Drone Port lovers or whatever, or the big one with the railgun, which I don't have an image for, it's okay for you to like them. They are at least thematic. I will give them that. They are a unique sort of thing. I kind of wish that the Tide Wall was better, because I think that could actually be interesting and fun. But in terms of how competitive games are done and played, something that could be mobile becoming immobile, or moving very slowly and having to be in this transport and whatever else, and then the unwieldy nature of getting it around buildings and everything else, you're opting into not playing the mission in the game to have some fun with some dudes behind an energy wall.
And they're big. For anyone who hasn't seen one in person, I have the full wall that came out when it first came out. So I bought it for a display board. Great for a display board. The models are actually really cool.
Yeah.
The little blue energy wall's pretty sick. The double railgun's pretty cool. I was going to pull it off and put it onto Longstrikers like his railgun, just to be a little bit different. But they are massive. The drone port is huge. It's bigger than a Town R base. Huge. It's absolutely massive. It's huge. And on a WTC format, you can't even get it between buildings.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And it just there's no way that you can opt into that. So these things aren't even a competitive choice. It actually, it makes me wonder, the person who created this put in a Tide Wall and a drone port over Onvar, the 2 different commander types that are missing from the Coldstar, and just... I'll have to keep this up, and I'll see if I can find a better one for when I post this, because obviously there's no context to posting images online, and people look at it and be like, actually, you're missing the Enforcer Commander and the Coldstar, and Onvar's not on there, and where's Onshi? Onshi's down here in the dirt. But yeah, so I might find a better one to post up there. But let's look at rearranging this so that we're happy with the position of everything. Now, does Swamp Ass need a readjustment? I think this category kind of speaks for itself. If you're in here, it doesn't matter where you are in there. You're just in there.
Yeah, look, I tend to not get too bogged down on where stuff is sitting within its own category. Because the difference between the top and the bottom of a Swamp Ass category means very little. All the stuff that is in the greater good or the greatest good, they're there for a reason. They all have their own roles and, functionally different depending on the meta and the packs you're playing in. But they are still, the premier units of your codex, and you'll probably take them.
Yeah. And I think that's sort of the thing that for anybody who's shown up a little bit later or whatever, tier lists are kind of a meme, and we've leaned into it a little bit. You need context for all of these different things. So if you didn't see the parts where we listed them, go back and this will be a VOD immediately. Go back and watch where we were talking about it, because we have tried to explain literally everything. A lot of people, when they do tier lists, just put stuff there and say, oh, it's good, it's bad, and then they just leave it at that. And a newer player or somebody who's not, higher up in the competitive sphere or not picking the brain of a literal WTC champion they won't really know exactly why they're making decisions or whatever else. So when examining tier lists, always do so with the same thing you would do if you were a scientist, for example. So, mate, when I'm looking at these things, just to have all of our ducks in a row, I kind of just like having the Devilfish next to the Breaches. I don't think anything really needs readjustment up here. They're all fantastic, and as you accurately pointed out, in different lists, you are taking these in some form of another, and it doesn't really matter. Greater good. Are there any units that stand out more than the others and should sit further to the left and higher up?
Not really. I think we've done pretty well sorting them.
I would agree. I would agree.
I think because the book has weirdly enough, a good thing. It has some diversity of really good units and really shit units that you don't get a huge crowding in one category where, some of these tier lists you see, 90% of the units get put into, like A tier and then you're sort of forced to shuffle them around. But I think because of the diversity of some really good and some really horrible units, you get that nice spread. So, you could maybe leapfrog one over another one, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really change that they're cemented in that category.
One thing I do want to do is I want to put the Stormsurge up the top of Lesser Evil, and that is just 100% personal bias. I have to look out for my boy.
Go for it. They're sick models. I like mine. I wish I could put them on the table again.
Kroot Hounds are definitely at the bottom of good. That was one thing I stipulated when they were there. The Ethereal doesn't beat out these other models. I think the Skyray beats out the Farsight at the very least.
Yes, I'd put a Skyray in before a Marksman.
Yeah. But everything else, it kills me that the Remoras are here. That is just such waste of potential. I know that I only saw the data sheet, read it properly only a couple of days ago, but I feel like there's some intergenerational trauma going on for what these could have been and what they are.
Look, I've done the same thing where I've gone back to explore the codex and options. I'm like, these could have some play. I'm like, no, they're expensive. No OC. God, that sucks. Really just puts a nail in the coffin for them.
Yep. And that is our tier list. For anybody who came in a little bit later, we reviewed the other commanders. None of them made it into the greatest good. That is only a Coldstar. On She is down the bottom. On Var, I believe we put into good because he had a game plan, but he didn't really... he didn't offer much more than just a really obnoxious little cheap thing that you could throw at people.
Yeah, it's just a bit niche.
Yeah, but mate, looking at it, I am pretty happy to stand behind this. And I think this was a really, really good in-depth conversation. I don't know if you've noticed, mate, we're coming on 3 hours. And I don't think we could have done this in any less amount of time without cutting out a huge amount of information. And even though it's going to be a slog for people to get through, and all of you ballers that have been here, we haven't dropped below 80 viewers. We peaked at 107 or something. For my third stream, that is insane. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for being here to the end. You guys are incredible. I apologize I haven't been able to be as interactive with chat as I normally am. I like to, but you don't get to have a world champion on very, very often. So, he kind of demanded a little bit more of my time. That, he gets very upset in private if I don't. So, that's... but, yeah, just... I'm really, really happy with the amount we went through, and some of the things that you've given me to think about are really, really great. It really shows that there is no point where somebody should think that they understand everything about a codex or an index or whatever else. There is always more skills to learn. Yeah.
Look, I guarantee I'll be getting some messages over the next couple of days from you. That's more than welcome, my man. So.
And I'll let you know how the double Stormsurge goes. I know that you're holding on with bated breath to see if it's the new meta that's going to be abusing everybody. It's not.
I'll be refreshing BCP every 5 minutes.
But, mate, I want to thank you for being on here. Thank you to everybody who has watched. I will allow our champ to head off as you've probably got a day tomorrow. And then I'll sit here and maybe field some questions, interact with chat a little bit, and then I'll shut the stream off as well, as it is almost midnight here in Australia. So, Hayden, mate, thank you so much for being on. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I love jumping on and talking about Tau. You'll have to actively try and deter me from doing it. I'm pretty sure all the guys are sick of me talking about Tau in the group chats.
Mate, always welcome. I don't get enough Tau players down here, let alone players that don't spit on me for playing Tau. So, it's quite nice. It's quite nice.
All you guys in the chat, if you're not already following Jay, jump on, give him a follow, give him some support. He puts out some quality content.
Thank
and
you,
we definitely need that from our Aussie counterparts. We're lacking a bit of content creators down under. So show him some love.
That actually reminds me, in the description, if you're on YouTube and if you're on Twitch, go to my YouTube. In the description of this video, we have both the page for Ethos, which is the team that Hayden plays on. Really, really amazing group of people. A large number of WTC players or champions or just people that you kind of sweat when you get paired against at a tournament that are putting up some amazing stuff to help out the community, help people learn the game. And also Hayden's commission painting Instagram, where you can see his work. He's going to be putting out some stuff there. It's just starting out, so make sure you get a follow so you get everything that he's going to be putting up, and maybe you'd be lucky enough to have him paint some of your models. So if you're interested, make sure that you reach out. Hayden, that's it from me, my dude. I'm going to go and have a chat to my chat and see what degeneracy comes out of it. But you have a great night, my man.
Thank you. Let me know what comes out, and drop us a follow. Both the Ethos podcast and the my personal painting page, links below. You get to see some quality content by some people with a good amount of tenor of the game, and hopefully learn a couple of things along the way.
Absolutely.
So, but thanks for having me, and good night.
All right, good night, bud. All right, so we will drop the collab cam, which that worked very, very well. And we're going to go to, because I have new sort of stuff, have a look at this baller bit of pixel art while we're talking and interacting and whatever else. This was one of the coolest things that I think I found. So I'm going to catch up with a little bit of chat. If you guys have any questions, then throw them through now. If you want to have yours seen above everybody else, then super chatting is something that you can do. Will definitely get my attention above the stream of stuff. We had a lot of chatters tonight. It's really hard not looking at the chat and sort of focusing on the person that you're chatting to. But how do you guys feel about the tier list that we put down? Obviously, it's supposed to be for just very, very competitive minded people, but it's really sort of identified to me that, because I've had to collect everything on a bit of a shoestring budget, making concessions here and there when I can, I really do need to invest in probably some of the more like Forge World stuff when I could get the money for that. So, 4 to 5 years. But just filling out the roster a little bit more, because I try and play tournaments as much as I can, and protecting yourself against a changing meta is always a really, really important thing to do. But let's have a look at some stuff. Yuvara +1 tier for being the coolest looking suit in the entire tower range. I really do love it. I really, really, really do love it. It looks really awesome. There's so much you guys went through. Tac drones, getting some laughs was really funny. Noam Var, yes there was, yep. To any of my YouTube members or patrons that sent you messages, apologies that I couldn't see you, but love you guys. You are amazing. Moody Minis, how you doing? Heck, Forge World 3D printed? I probably should. I honestly probably should. It is just such an alarming prospect to think about paying the amount of money that we had to. And if you're interested in all the Forge World stuff, go and check out the live stream where I did all of them. I had my rant about Pathfinders and Darkstrider at the end, but that was a really, really good chat. We look at the units, whether I think they're good. I went onto the Forge World page and died a little bit from the prices, but Krootox undertiered. I think we had to put them in lesser evil. Honestly, I think we had to. They are good, and this is something that I was saying, and for context for everybody, I will say it again. There are sometimes things got put down to tier because they were outshone by other things when we're looking at the top 1% of lists or what we plug in or where we're spending our points. And Krootox riders can fill a role, and they are good, but they're in the same tier as the Kroot Carnivores, which for 55 points, I still think they're fine if that's what you've got and you're going to run. But if you've got optimal models available, and maybe I should have said that at the start, that, models aren't an issue. You've got everything you could possibly need. Because the other side of it is, if you don't own something that's in the top tiers, don't feel bad about it. Like, it's something to work towards maybe, or if you just don't like the models, don't sweat it. But if you've got everything available to you, the Krootox rider just gets a little bit outshone, unfortunately. Okay, so 2 Tiger Sharks or 1 Tiger Shark? For me or for you? Because if it's for me, I will try and get 2 of them. At the very least. I love being able to run pairs of stuff. It's probably fine just to start out with 1. I don't know that you need more. What do you guys think? Good core for 1k list with Farsight. If you're going to be taking Farsight, he can be used as a single, like a Deep Striker piece or Rapid Ingress to go and then touch people. That is perfectly reasonable. But he's probably at his best when he's surrounded with a little bit of Crisis, because at a 1k game, you're going to be getting into range of a lot more things. There's less scary stuff to just pick up a 6-man Crisis unit in one go. And because now it's like, 360 for a 6-man Crisis unit. Throw 90 points on top of that, you're paying 450. It's half your list, so it's a big ask, but maybe even a 3-man. There's, at 1,000 points, if you play the 3-man correctly, there's probably not a lot of stuff that's picking up all of that in the one go. But I would probably say Fish of Fury is your better bet. If Farsight is negotiable, maybe you drop him, maybe you keep him in and then just have him solo drop in, as I said, from Deep Strike. Fish of Fury is fantastic. Piranhas are 55 points each, so fitting into a 1,000-point list is super easy. Crit Hounds are honorary greater good for the cheapest free scoring. It hurt me to do that to my Crit Hounds. It has hurt me all index. I love them. I love them in 9th so much. One of my most successful videos when I was first starting out was talking about Crit Hounds and how I move block people or use a 30-point unit to stop a big knight from walking where he wants to walk. It was... I love my Crit Hounds. They were so great, and it really hurts me what happened to them. I love this stuff. My gaming group in general is not very competitive, but I recently got a friend of mine into 40k, and he really wants to play at peak levels, so this stuff helps. I'm really glad that you're enjoying it. That's why I do it. That's why I try and give as many explanations as I can. Granny plays DG, so not a big problem yet. Oh, he will be. After this data slate, he will be. How many Devilfish plus Breach combos to take? Thinking Min 2 as a speed bump. I like putting in doubles. Fish of Fury 3 is fantastic. It is a bit more of an investment, but still great if we're still talking about the 1,000 point sort of level. Go with 2 to start out with. And it's also hard when I'm recommending to somebody who might be starting out buying models or whatever. The Combat Patrol boxes are fantastic because you get Ghost Kills and Breaches and Stealth Suits and whatever else. I think at the core, the biggest thing you need to solve, because this is what I do for a 2,000 point list, I will solve certain things in order. So I've got my core damage. If in this instance it's the Breach of Fish combo, which also doubles into the category of scoring the game and running the primary mission. Then you need to think about your guiders. So you need to have things like Tetras, Stealth Suits, Firesight Marksman, just things that have the marker-like keyword that can guide for you. Pathfinders might be a great idea. If you're playing at 1,000 points, you might just be starting out. And as I said in the Pathfinder section of it, they are great for people that are still learning their order of activations, because you can just do it for 2. You don't get punished as heavily. So that is a way that you can go to have a marker-like keyword unit that can do it for 2. If you've got like 2 units of them or whatever, that's 180 points. That's almost nothing. And you've got 4 guiders, or you can poke 1 unit of Pathfinders out, guide for 2 units, your damage units. Even if they die, you've then got another one that can poke its head out and then guide for another 2 units. And after you've had 4 activations across 2 turns, this should be a decent amount of stuff dead. So, yeah. Farsight, Coldstar, 3 Crisis, Fish, Breaches, 2 Piranha, Tetra, Broadside equals 1k, not bad, right? That does look good. Yes, Farsight, individual tech piece, Coldstar with the 3 Crisis unit. They will be a monster. I would highly recommend Cyclics just so you got the volume. If you had a 6-man, you can play a little bit more flexibly with the other stuff. I love the Cyclics. It'll also help you learn when to overcharge and when to not, because they take 3 mortal wounds for each one that you roll. Don't forget, you can CP a hazardous test. So if there's too many, you can go, no, I'm gonna stop that and negate 3 mortal wounds. Post Pantheon GT list so I can counter pick you. I'm running the event. I don't have a list. I will be TOing. But maybe I'll send you my list for the event after that. Hopefully I can get into Moab. I actually forgot to buy my ticket with organising my own GT and doing content stuff or whatever. I really hope I can get into Moab, because otherwise I'm not going to have a big event for a decent while. And a Ghostkeel. Yes, Ghostkeels are fantastic. Don't forget the commander has to take his own hazardous, so be careful. Actually, interestingly enough, did you know in the core rules, when a model is leading a unit, hazard tests have to be taken on characters first? So if a 6-man Crisis unit overcharges and you overcharge even 1 gun on the commander, he takes all of the mortal wounds first. Pretty fun. Pretty fun. It is why there is a skill cap to using your hazardous and your overcharges. Only his own, otherwise you allocate normally. I'm pretty sure, I'm going to look this up in the core rules, because I was having a look at this before. And note to everybody, if there's ever something you don't know, make sure you always read. The more you read the core rules, the better off you will be. And you notice that, like, you know, even Hayden and I, there was some stuff we had to look up. This is an incredibly complex game. Make sure you're always reading. Known as hazardous. If one or more models attack with hazardous weapons, then after that unit has resolved all of its attacks, you must take 1 hazardous test for each hazardous weapon that was just used by rolling 1d6. Now, maybe that's the wording that the commander only takes his own, but for each one that test is failed and 1 model in that unit equipped with a hazardous weapon is destroyed, selected by the controlling player, unless that model is a character, monster, or vehicle, in which case it suffers 3 mortal wounds instead. Note that if you selected a character model in an attached unit, the mortal wounds suffered must be allocated to that model first, even if there is another model in that unit that has lost 1 or more wounds or has had attacks allocated to it this phase. Now, off reading that, I'm pretty sure my interpretation was correct, that if your character overcharges, the character has to take it first. But it might be, and it would make sense from a rules by intent sort of perspective, that I can only take him from his guns. But yeah. Victor, yeah, you choose who to allocate to, but it did have the express line, unless there's a character in an attached unit, then the character must take it first. That's not how I read it. You can allocate it freely as normally. It was that last paragraph. Well, say my book rule... Well, my save bookmark for the core rules is broken. Do you not have the GW app? There should be everything free online. You don't... They're paywalling the army builder, but I'm pretty sure they're keeping the core rules for free. What are your thoughts on swapping Plasma for Cyclic to avoid the hazardous altogether? I've been playing with Plasma with my Coldstar Squad and Fusion on my Farsight one. Fusions, I would stay away from. I'm not a fan of them. They are a swamp-ass tier gun. If only for the range. And because most stuff, if you're only getting 1 shot and you're only getting like strength 9 at a short range, I would just go for the Plasma. I actually said when we were talking about the Crisis suits, I actually don't mind the Plasma. I actually think it's good. The Cyclics have a lot of volume and, you know, a lot of shots. Like a 6-man unit with a Coldstar that's got 4 guns attached to him. That's 66 shots. 6-6. And with double exploding 6s, that's a lot. But then you look at a Crisis team outfitted with Plasmas, and you've got what? So you've got 3x6, so 18, and then the 4, you got 22 plasma shots with double explodes. That can be really, really nice as well, and avoiding the hazardous is fantastic. I mentioned in the video that I like learning and getting some skill expression with knowing when to overcharge and when not. Because I actually don't overcharge most of the time. It is only when either the battle is swinging and I can afford to lose crisis suits, or I know that I absolutely need it, so losing a suit and a half on average is okay. But if you're trying to tank shot with Farsight anyway, yeah, absolutely. The fusions I don't go to because I feel like there are other things that can fit that anti-tank role, and having cyclics or plasmas or missile pods means that you have flexibility, which is what I look for with my crisis suits. I like having flexibility. Now, if you want to run fusions and you like them and you get value out of them, then I absolutely run them. I'm just not a fan. I really think that they are a bad profile. If they didn't lose the range, they are still great. But a plasma is 3 damage. Straight off. There's no rolling for it. You don't underspike or whatever else. You have consistent stuff, which you'll notice in this video, we were talking about a lot of things that bring consistency to a list, which is usually what is pretty big to us. Weapon option tier list next, or is it 2 unit dependent? It is a little unit dependent, but it might actually be doable. I think that talking about weapons is actually very, very important because it changes based on local meta. It changes on the makeup of your army. There are a few things that really, really stand out, but I think also there's a lot of people that maybe don't understand why certain things are bad, or we don't want to take them, or they're outshone by other things. So maybe just putting context to it of giving people a why and letting them decide if that why is worth it for them. Because that's the most important thing, that if it's worth it for somebody in a meta that I'm not playing in against armies that I might not get matched into, their experience will be very different to mine. And even though I would probably still be able to succeed, because, you know, when you're good at something, usually you can succeed more often than not. But if they're getting value out of it, then that's the most important thing. That's why explaining the why to people is so important. So that people can make decisions without me as a content creator or somebody else or whatever, and still see success. This is stop people allocating to a character then putting the mortal wounds on the infantry that has a 4+ save against mortal wounds. That makes sense. You are selecting models in a unit fire hazardous and allocating the hazardous wounds as such. Nothing in the rules forces it onto the character. The rule just says that if you do, they must take their own wounds. It didn't say they must take their own wounds. It just says if you selected a character model in an attached unit, so if he overcharges any of his guns, he has been a character that is a model in an attached unit, the mortal wounds suffered must be allocated to that model first. Though I would tend to agree from a rules as intended sort of thing, that it would be exactly as you said, that he can't just palm his mortal wounds off onto the unit. I don't agree with being able to do that. So, yeah. Let's go on them. +1 wound from Farsight within 9. That is also very nice. So if you can use Farsight in the best way possible, I've kind of liked just having plasmas on the Farsight unit, because then you've just got the same profile all across the board and they fit a particular role. But I don't feel like there's any wrong answers particularly. Even though I'm not a fan of the fusion and I think it's a shit gun, that is from the way that I play the game. And you would have even noticed, like, Hayden straight up said he's a very aggressive player by nature. He loves that style. And I have certain parts of my game that can be hyper aggressive. I'm also very, very flexible with when I turn it on and I turn it off. But having said that, Hayden's a world champion, so maybe being aggressive is the absolute play. I don't know. Fair enough. I feel like we're getting bogged down in the mortal wound thing. So I won't talk about that anymore, but like I definitely agree that even from a rules intended perspective, it's the character not palming mortal wounds off on other people. But like so much stuff within 10th, they worded it in a way that just can be interpreted. So what I would play it as, and what I would recommend talking to your TO as, or whatever else, that, you know, if your character doesn't overcharge, don't worry about it. If he overcharges, he takes his mortals, everybody else takes theirs. Or if you want to, I guess the other suits can palm it off onto the character. I don't think there's anything that you'd never want to do that, but yeah. How about a 3-man squad of Flamers with Farsight? Kiri, we actually said, and welcome to one of my members, we actually said in the stream that Flamers Unfortunately, you do need to give up a little bit, but with Farsight is kind of the only way that you really want to play Flamers. They lost the +2 on their D6s, which means that you've got less output overall. Everything in the army, everything in the game went up in toughness, and Flamers stayed where they were, along with all of our other guns. So having +1 to wound is kind of mandatory to run Flamers. And they will, if you're into like GSE, Necrons, anything like that, Flamers will pump. They will absolutely pump, because if the plan is rapid ingress, you're going to be able to move into that 9-inch. You +1 to wound a bunch of flamer shots into them. And then if they move on their turn, if the unit doesn't die or somebody else moves, you overwatch them with guaranteed attacks again. It can be very, very powerful. I want to know what you think about 1 Sib, 2 plasma missiles. Since if you overcharge all of them, it is like charging only 2 suits. That can be a way that you play. It depends on what you need as to whether you go there. Obviously, because we're not punished for points anymore, taking 3 of a gun can be really great because it clearly defines exactly what role those suits are going to play. Whereas before, because of points, we rolled like, say, the Burst Cannon, Sib, and Plasma, or Burst Cannon, Missile Pod, Plasma, that sort of stuff. There are a ton of good options you can roll with the weapons. My biggest piece of advice, and I say this to literally everybody, when you've got an idea, regardless of what anybody else says, me or anybody, go and slap it down in a friendly game against somebody that you trust to, have a good sort of training game with, and just run it into the ground. See what you think, and then take all of your biases and your personal feelings out of it, look at it post-game and go, okay, what was I happy with? Why was I happy with it? Why was I unhappy with it? And is this just because in this particular game it happened because of a chain of events? Or if I were to do this game over and over again, would I see the same results? And then the more you do that, the more you will pick up all of little nuances that you weren't even trying to learn. You will pick up why we're taking different weapons, and you will hit a play style that is really comfortable and good for you. So everybody, run stuff into the ground. Train as much as you can. Even if you just put down, and me and my training group do this all the time, you put down play turn 1 and 2, re-rack, go again. Because a lot of the time, most competitive players will know if they're going to lose or win the game within the first 2 turns, and it doesn't really matter how the rest of it plays out. So, yeah, absolutely do that. 22 plasma shots should pick up about 10 Marines on average. Full missile loader was about a coin flip to wipe them. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, AP3, strength 8, you're wounding them on 2s. It's, 3 damage, even if you throw it into Terminators, you're giving them a real headache. Overcharged ions kill Marines by a shit ton, but won't kill a 10-man squad without either rerolls or Cal Yun active, if not overcharged. Interesting. Simplified, not simple, my ass. Yeah, look, I feel like that was a tagline that they threw on to sell the edition, and, hats off to them. They did it. But I don't think anybody should really buy into that. Unfortunately, and I was very critical in my only negative video that I put out, where it's the one with the thumbnail of the spaceman capping the other dude. But really, I honestly do think, and I've heard this a little bit, that there's like 2 people that are just trapped in a room and they're like, write this stuff. They don't playtest as much as they should. Like, hell, dudes like Hayden, and they do this in Magic the Gathering, they actually pull pros off the circuit, pay them to find every broken interaction in the new cards and whatever else, and get them to just playtest the absolute shit out of it. They come off the circuit for like a year or 2, playtesting their stuff. They get literal pros to run all of their stuff into the ground, and it kind of works. Like, for all of people's problems with Magic the Gathering, generally speaking, for how many goddamn cards there are only a handful of things that slip through the cracks, which you're never going to get rid of everything. But, yeah. Yeah, I get that. I play on GW. Sorry, asking again because I think you didn't see it, where I could find the pixel art, please, for research purposes. Yeah, the GIF of the people shooting and everything. I think I just did a Google test. Sorry, a Google search. I think I chucked in, what was the search terms? It was, just like, animated, animated towel art, I think. See if you can find it on there. And then in Google, just click on the images tab and then scroll down. And then when you see it, once you click on it, I don't think they have a GIFs tab. I think you have to go into images, or maybe it's videos, but just see if you find it there. Yeah, sorry that I missed that, Moody. Play on GW terrain, so I really don't like broadsides at all. That's fair. That's also the other side, that Hayden and I play on WTC terrain quite a bit. The top of competitive uses WTC because they solve so many goddamn things that GW refuses to touch. Like, I don't care how people feel about WTC. Nobody can argue that WTC doesn't move very, very quickly to solve uninteractive stuff or stuff that's just like straight up bad for the game. And yeah, so that's fair. Like, WTC terrain and rules and everything else is different from GW. So also build a list and use the models that work on different terrain sets. And that's also a bit of mastery that you can pick up with what actually works the more you playtest. Love 10th so far, even though they ruined my Votan. Oh, yeah, but massively better after the data slate. I am actually wanting to get some games in on Votan. Very much, Tao very much make it up for you. That's good. By Steel Joe, thank you very much. I actually, because this didn't have any crediting on there, I am actually going to throw that on now. Let's, you guys will get to see the sausage getting made. So, text. No, we're going to add a new one. Credit. And we will, so it is my Steel Joe, font size, we will, it's not too bad at 36, I think I'll put it at 24, and then we will just grab that and chuck that down there. Thank you very much for finding that, Loopy. That is really, really good here. I've got 2 LGS in my area in Taipei. Taipei viewer. Very nice. One does GW style terrain and one does ITC. Jay, have you ever done ITC style terrain? Any thoughts on that? Yes, I have. ITC, you shouldn't notice too many differences from WTC. Mostly what you need to do, I find, especially when you're going between different terrain sets, go and talk to your TO if there's anything that doesn't make sense or whatever, and just ask some clarifying things about, like, you know, when I'm standing within ruins or the first floor blocked out. See if you can get access to the players pack before the event, where they should have a terrain layout with exactly what's going to be there, and maybe even keywords that are attached to them. The more research you can do in the lead up to events, because certain TOs might run things a little bit differently, that is the best way to guarantee that you don't get caught out by terrain rules. They ruin Votan players' wallets by needing another half a K of points. Yes, but having said that, I find that anybody that was a real diehard Votan fan probably had, like, I actually found that I had a 2,000 point list that I was running at the end of 9th. I went to Uprising, a super major, where Hayden, actually, it's where I met him, went 2nd, I believe. On his tower list, he did fantastically. And I was running Votan, had like no practice games, and still was in the top, I think I was in the top 40 or something. That 2,000 point list now is less than, and I've been scrambling, actually, I'll show you. I've been scrambling to paint up my warriors, because now I actually have to put them in a list, because the end of 9th you weren't using warriors. They were pretty bad. Unless you were spamming them, in which case you would, but yeah. So, yeah, but like, nobody should be surprised by the data slate that we got. GW said ages out that it was just going to be points. We got lucky that they went above and beyond and reined in most of the egregious stuff that's in the game and bumped us and Votan and Death Guard and everything else. Originally, it was just going to be points. So it had to happen. And I know that the Votan community is mixed on, oh, we're a Horde army now. Oh, we're not. I think it's fantastic. I think being able to put more stuff on the board, one of Votan's biggest problems is that they didn't have enough resources to trade and still take objectives and get secondaries and whatever else. So, yeah. It's almost 10 years old on DeviantArt. Oh, okay. Nice. Fenner, thank you. Must be old. There's an old metal stealth suit in there. Yeah. Which actually, I had an absolute baller patron of mine, who I don't know if I will actively name, but they printed me some stuff. And among them were the old stealth suits, which I'm really keen on because I actually love those boys. I think they're fantastic. From Perth, WA, but been living here in Taipei for the last 3 years. Wanted to live here for a bit because my missus is from Taiwan. Oh, very nice. Very nice. Thanks for your effort, Jay. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And I am probably going to have to end the stream. We are hitting on midnight. I want to thank everybody for being here. If you are not already and you want to support me, the stream, the work that I'm doing, everything else, and even I've extended it out so that if you want to get your name on the banner that I'll be revealing very, very soon. It's been made. It's sitting in my house. I'm very excited. Up next to the Art of War and everything else on my GT, head to the YouTube membership button down below or my Patreon, where you will get access to the Discord. And once you're in for life. So even if people can only do 1 month, that is absolutely fine. Every little bit is absolutely incredible. I will have my merch site launching very, very soon. I'm very excited about it. Chelsea's been hard at work. She has made, in a short amount of time, over 35 merchandise items of different categories and everything else. So, a lot of announcements coming. Thank you very much for sticking out with the stream. You guys are absolutely incredible. I'm so lucky to have such a passionate Tau community to provide content for. So, yeah, and do the internet things. I keep forgetting to say that. Do the liking and the sharing and the whatever else. Or don't. I'm not your dad. But thank you very much to everybody that's been chatting. You guys are amazing. Hope you all have a great night. And I will see you in my next video.